Three, two, one, go.
Holy shit.
We're
I like
live.
to always do that. It's just like the first thing.
Nice.
So what's up, guys?
Oh, just out here fighting a good fight.
You're
Fighting the good fight, huh?
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon.
So we got Austin Abels and Jeff Herring.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, I work with these guys at ArmCorp.
Absolutely.
But
Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
and,
It's a nice new experience. It's something that
you guys never done?
never done,
done.
but you know, I feel like it's a pretty common thing. A lot of people listen to podcasts nowadays, and it's nice to kind of dip your toes in and to be a part of one. So we appreciate it.
We literally just started just to like talk, like because it's a dying breed. And it's awesome to talk to people because everyone has their own stories, experiences, and likes and stuff. So it's fun.
Absolutely.
You get to know a little bit. But
I normally keep it, I've been keeping it to Instagram. And for when I'm out there, and I caught myself maybe 3 or more suspensions. So
have you?
we'll move it to the podcast. See if
What
they can shut us
they
down.
suspend you for?
One was I was spreading, air quotes or misinformation, saying that there was a link to heart inflammation and the vaccine.
Which most likely is.
Well, no, it's proven. Like myocarditis is all over the place, and so like it's just hilarious because after the fact it came out that I wasn't wrong. I had like 3 Reuters fact checks, and one was no link to heart inflammation. Another one is strange signs of heart inflammation. Pfizer slaps warning label heart inflammation. It's like, all right, well, there's one.
Yeah.
What was the other two?
I'm trying to remember what it was because I've gotten warned so many times, but
See, that's just the fact that you can get kicked off for that little of a problem is quite ridiculous.
Well,
and found out to be true. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It seems as though like a lot of people are saying stuff and they were getting banned or shut up, and like there's a lot of stuff that they're coming out and saying the exact same stuff. And they're like, well, we told you.
Yep. And that's what, part of the problem is, like, for those who don't know, like, you guys know who Robert Malone is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
The doctor that got taken off from Joe Rogan
Yep.
on
Yep.
YouTube.
So he's been very vocal on Twitter in the first place, and he was probably around 500,000 followers, and he started talking about this Canadian COVID Care Alliance presentation, and that's what got him kicked off of Twitter. Because he was, once again, spreading misinformation.
Right.
But I'll go through it, but this is straight from, it's just an analysis of Pfizer's trials
Okay.
to get approval on the vaccine in the first place. So he was talking about it, got banned with 500,000 viewers, goes on Rogan's podcast, 3 weeks later, and hits 50 million views on that one. And I know most of the people took away of mass formation psychosis was the main topic of it, but those are the cliff notes of it, so that's what everybody's focusing on. But if you actually look at what he was kicked off for, and actually look at it itself and go through it, it's
well, that's like I might have showed you the video, Jacob. There was maybe in the 70s or something. They did a study and they recorded it, and it was over mass formation psychosis, I believe. And what they did was they had a picture and they had 2 lines on the paper. And one line was longer than the other line. They had a group of people, and they had one person that was actually the experiment, and the rest were actors.
Okay.
And so they went around to each of these actors, and they asked them, which are the lines, is one line bigger than the other, or the same? And it took maybe 2 or 3 times around of different lines or different sizes of lines, and the kid who was the experiment ended up going against what he was seeing just because everyone else was saying, oh, they're both the same size.
Right.
And he ended up just saying, he looked at it puzzled too. I might have...
He's just you can tell that he was questioning his decision, but yet still makes the choice to go along with it.
And that was, a big eye opener for me because I was just like, people are very subjective.
Were you the person who told me that like there's like this one very high prominent biologist, and he was like, biologists today are completely idiots? Like,
yeah, there was an old biologist that said, I've gone out. What was it? It was like, I've gone out in the field, and these younger biologists, they need a peer-reviewed paper telling them what they saw is real to believe it's real. He's like, you just pretty much was talking about the ridiculousness of it. Because, like, if you see something happen with your own eyes, it's probably real.
Chances are, right? Exactly.
Walk like a duck. Does it talk like a duck?
Probably a duck.
Yeah.
I think, like, the biggest thing that it sucks that everyone's getting attacked over, like, just talking about ideas and whatever. But I think it's also shining a light on, like, how absurd it actually is. It's like, I can't even talk about an idea without getting deplatformed or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, man.
And that just goes against the fundamentals of science in the first place.
Exactly.
Is being able to have an honest, open discussion about it, whether, because, the truth doesn't shy away from being criticized. It's the lies are the ones that sink back.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you see people getting deplatformed, censored, basically their lives drugged through the dirt as a smear campaign and coercion, it's embarrassing that you got to say it, but, like, that's not science.
No, yeah. And it's because I believe it's become a cult. Like, it's definitely become a cult where it's like you only have a few people saying what the science is, and then people are like, they take it as like the Bible or something like that.
Right. They're like, well, trust science.
Yeah,
But, like, all right,
exactly.
well, what about this scientist? Cut to deplatformed. All scientists agree.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and then did you see that the paper that said 270 doctors, and then they came out and it showed that, like, only 100 of them, if that, were actual doctors.
Most of them were like teachers. One was psychiatrists.
Yeah.
Med students.
One was a podcast host.
Yeah.
It was like,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
and the funny thing is, like, everyone made such a big about those 270 doctors, and yet like 500 actually follow Malone, like Dr. Malone.
Yes.
Like 500 of them actually. So, like, well, 200, 500. I'm going with the
And it
was
gets
just
even
500.
worse because I don't know if you guys know who Dr. Peter McCullough is.
I listened to that Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, same
too.
guy. Well,
McCullough,
he responded to that when that article came out. I think it was the New York Post who dropped the original one and said, okay, well, me and the 16,000 doctors who signed this Declaration of Independence for mandatory vaccines challenge you to an open debate.
Your 200 doctors.
Yeah, doctors in air quote too.
well, I've been saying that same shit about the whole climate change stuff. And, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying if it's real or not real, whatever. I could care less at this point. It doesn't really affect me.
Right.
But they came out with all of these thousands of scientists back climate change, whatever, and they're not. It's like you're acting like this small fraction of the community is determining what the whole community is.
Right.
Well, that's our media in a nutshell. It's just hyper, reverberate that one small narrow point or narrow viewpoint and make it seem like it's the majority viewpoint.
Right. I heard a blurb back about the climate change, touching base on it, was real estate and money. You always follow real estate. You always follow the money, right? So why is it that the coast of Florida is the highest selling real estate and most desirable place in the USA to live, but it's quote unquote the most threatened in terms of climate change? It's going to flood out. It's going to fall off of the USA, whatever the
water
case may
level's
be.
going to rise.
Why is it still selling? People know that this could all be bullshit. They're calling bluffs, right?
Well, and that's like my whole thing with the climate change, and even this is the same with COVID. They're just both ways for the elites to create serfdom, feudalism.
Sure.
And like Hayek wrote about this in The Road to Serfdom, this is the end goal of it all: is you create a feudal state where a fraction of the population own all the wealth. I mean, you're seeing that right now with houses.
Yep, BlackRock.
Yeah, and Blackstone is another one that
Buying all the properties.
and they're trying to hit single family homes mainly because those are the people that are going to have to pay rent. And why you would hit single family homes too is they most likely they're a new family.
Right.
A new family is going to buy a single family home. They're not going to go out and spend and buy a mansion or whatever. They're going to buy whatever means they can buy. And like Blackstone is one of these big real estate investment funds too, and it's like kind of like BlackRock, but they're buying up land and developing it, and they're purposely buying it around good school districts too. So you create an environment that people who can't leave very easily,
Right.
and then you take away the ability to even buy, and you just have everyone rent, and so then it's a continually growing feudal state.
Yeah, and that's ultimately end goal. You will own nothing and you will like it.
Exactly. That's the Davos agenda.
I saw that.
And on your point, Jeff, about the coast of Florida, look at who's buying the
Pelosi,
properties, too.
didn't Pelosi buy it?
Same people were saying, "Oh, climate change." Cut to me with a new, $10 million Florida mansion.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you use the same logic. You see all these people that flew private jets to all of these climate change things and whatever, and it's like you could have just done your part by not flying on a private jet.
Sure. But you didn't.
No. So it's like, who are you really that for the idea if you're not even gonna like practice it at all?
Right.
I think you're more for the paycheck, right?
Exactly.
You're just who's
Right.
buying you out of it.
That's right.
How are you going to push it?
Leonardo DiCaprio has this huge ocean fund, kind of like Terramar,
Yeah.
Cut to who's involved with that, But he also owns a giant yacht that burns, like 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel cruising around the ocean, every couple.
I think it was like I've looked into like how much carbon, even though I don't really think anything of it, but they list like I think a yacht to run it yearly is like 7,000 tons of carbon emissions or something like that, and like that's like 5 times more than most people just make in their day-to-day life,
Right.
And it burns so much. And don't get me wrong, like it doesn't make any sense to me because like the whole world is built on carbon. I don't know why we'd not want carbon.
Right.
Like, there's
Seems kind
more
of like a
more
fundamental.
green today than there ever has been. So
Right.
I think it's kind of a good thing to have a lot of green, right?
Sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
When people forget, like we're coming out of an ice age too, like still.
Right.
Yes, their sun cycles. I mean, it goes through ebbs and flows.
Exactly.
Looking back their history. But, climate change, to me, whether I'm not arguing whether it's real or not, but just seems just like everything else is just another excuse to funnel money.
Well, they want to funnel money. They want to get these solar and wind because they're probably going to have some kind of investment into it that they're going to make a lot of money from it.
Me and Jeff were talking about this the other day. You know what they do with windmill blades?
They bury them, don't they?
Yeah, they
Bury them, dude.
And you were out in
They bury
Colorado.
'em.
They bury them in ravines.
Yeah,
and,
they can't get rid of them.
They can't recycle them.
Yeah.
What?
And so they literally bury them in the ground and cover them with dirt. And just,
What?
Yep.
Well, and see that
Feels
whole
So, like when they're broken or something, they just bury
They
them?
just when they're out of decommissioned, they bury them.
and see
How green is that for you?
Yeah, exactly. I think the whole point of the wind and solar is how do you stop people from moving up? So like why America's always was so good was that it gave you the ability to move classes. Like you could just
Everybody
work
could.
hard as if you're living in poverty, you could work hard and then move up in life.
Yep.
Sure.
Move up and then create generational wealth for the next generations to live off of.
Absolutely.
And how do you stop people from being able to build any generational wealth? You make all of their expenses so high that they can't save anything.
Right.
And it's like
Debt
we used
slave.
to have an oil well on the farm and a natural gas well. In the 70s, the government came around and sealed everyone's private wells. And that's like not a very high expense thing to build, like a small oil well. You're just drilling a hole in the ground and then stuff comes out.
Right.
It's a lot more money for me to buy a wind turbine or a solar grid to actually be able to power my house.
Right.
So they're creating all of these bigger and bigger barriers of entry. And eventually, and this is why I'm so big on cryptos, is because I see that as a system outside of the existing system that allows us to actually gain wealth still.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, it's still in its infancy. It's very volatile.
Very.
And that's just how it works. Every new market's just like that. Which that's my hope of cryptos, that it eventually establishes a system out, because it's all being manipulated by money right now.
Right.
You print so much money to make it so the smaller portions of the population can't afford anything, And then it's like, oh, you have to go to the government to get your check or whatever to live.
You got to have the assistance.
Yeah.
That's a whole different.
I'll have to take that question next time because I got I don't understand too much about the crypto. I got lucky and I made a good amount of chunk off of the Dogecoin.
Oh yeah,
just having a little bit of fun.
Just having a little bit of fun. Bought it when it was less than.
Oh, way to go!
First injury down.
Old chair.
Chair down. Oh no, it's slot back in. We're good.
Oh, there we go.
Oh good.
We're good.
Well, I got lots of questions regarding XRP that I got for you, but
XRP is see, I'm like, and this is anybody in crypto, like me saying, oh, I'm in it for the technology. It's like, yeah, partly I'm also in it for the money. Like I want to make money off of it too. But like the biggest thing I've been seeing is, so right now, payment processors through credit card merchants usually charge businesses like 2.7% plus.
3%, yeah.
And this is why people want to use debit cards, is because this is why Walmart asks you, is this a debit card or not? Is because it's 1% for a debit card.
Right.
I've been noticing that there's now crypto payment processors coming out, and they're like, we'll charge you 1%. And it's like, people are going to eventually be like, I'm losing 1.73% already on every transactions. Why don't I just move to this crypto?
Right.
Or the Fed will be like, we're going to establish a central bank digital currency.
Yep.
And that'll just give them the ability to make as many coins as they want. And
without having to actually go through the process
of printing money. Yeah, exactly.
Because at this point, our dollar has decreased in value so much, it costs them more to actually print it than it does the purchasing power.
I think it was like 60% of all dollars ever created was created in 2020.
Dude, that's crazy.
People don't
That's
like
an asinine amount of money.
And
you
like,
wonder why our inflation's
if you look at
yeah.
it's the M1 money supply. This is mind-boggling how much this has gone up. This is on the Fed's website.
Oh, this is all public data here.
Yeah.
That's
Oh my god.
That's the best part is all of his information is you can literally look up on all the
find it.
websites and no one.
It's like when I talk to people about the Great Reset, they think I'm like a conspiracy theorist or something, and I'm like, no. This is literally on the World Economics Forum's website. Like,
Is there literally a book?
yeah, exactly. The Great Reset.
You can read the fucking book.
I know. And that's what I think is the main problem, is that people just don't want to actually, because it takes a little bit of work to do your own research. It takes
time.
just a fraction amount. And it's a lot easier for me to read a headline and be like, I know everything about the article. I'm not going to read it all. I just take the headline.
Yep.
We live in a very instant gratification society
Ain't that
now.
the truth?
And it's why would I waste my time that I value so high to try to combat an opinion of somebody else? Is like, no, that's just not worth my time anymore.
And I've been noticing it's like there's a lot of attacks to character. I know it's hard to even like it's really because the craziest thing is like,
and the funny thing, it's still going up though.
Yeah,
it's going up. It's not even going down.
Yeah.
well, and it's just a straight line too. It's
Yeah.
like whoop.
Oh,
Go from where
it's four
like
times as much.
hit the shaded spot in 2020. What's the value? Like cover on that.
So that's I think this is in
4,000.
billions of dollars. So that's $4 trillion in circulation.
Okay.
And this is the M1 supply. So this is like bills. I don't necessarily think this is. It'll tell me.
Is it coins?
It's all currencies
Just
and everything.
Currencies, okay.
And so, like, if you want to talk about the treasury bonds, whatever, you look at the M2 money supply, and I mean that's kind of the same story.
Just from jumping from 4 to 22 trillion.
Yeah. Over 4 times the amount. And even that's even still a steady incline.
Well, and that's like the thing that's always perplexed me about the COVID is that I think it was JP Morgan and another bank. They in late 2019, they all took out like $6 and $9 billion loans or something like that. And it's weird to me because they did this exactly before the financial collapse. People were pulling out loans too.
Right.
And it's like they knew something was happening. Because why would you want to pull out a loan if the market's at an all-time high?
Right.
You want to pull out a loan because you're expecting it to crash. And why you would want to pull out a loan is because you want the best time to buy is when everything's low.
Right.
So
So
it's
you're
like you
about
want to
to
have
buy up.
you want to have liquid funds to be able to buy everything out.
Right.
And I think this is like the whole point of the whole COVID. This is on the edge of the conspiracy.
Yes.
It's like
This is my realm.
The whole point of the COVID deal is just to buy out a lot of all of these small businesses and land, whatever. Because this is kind of the same. I got to be careful how I say this. Reminds me of why the German people got very upset. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, like, this is why I have to be careful saying this. It's because certain groups first went to Poland, bought all of so Poland was in collapse after World War I. This group of people, I'm not saying who, it was various people, they went and bought out all of the alcohol farmers' land, and then they created serfs. They said, okay, you guys got to pay us this amount of money to use your land. And then they started jacking it up and making it so they couldn't even, like, live.
Right.
I pissed a lot of the Polish people. I believe it was Poland. They pissed them off, and they're like, get the hell out of our land.
Right.
So they left, and they went to another country that was war-torn and started buying out all of the family-run businesses, and that caused the people to get mad. And don't get me wrong, this is why I said I have to be careful saying there's a lot of other things that cause, it's a very complex issue, but this is like another symptom of it.
Right.
And that's what, it makes me nervous, because this stuff is happening, and it doesn't even matter who's doing it. It's various groups doing it, but it's just elites at this point.
General.
They're just the rich are really taking advantage of their positions.
Well, who owns the most farm property in the United States?
Yeah, old Billy Gates.
Billy Gates,
it's
man.
happening right before our eyes.
Exactly.
The only guy in the world that thinks depopulation is good for the world, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that and whoever put up those Georgia stones, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Well, okay, go. What is this?
You never heard of Georgia Guidestone?
Yeah,
Pull that up.
Georgia Guidestone.
I can't believe you've never heard about this.
Yeah, that's
Georgia
surprising.
Guidestone.
Some random person put these up, and I don't know who did it, but they have a certain list on them, and they said, here's the list.
Inscriptions on the stone. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. 2, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness, diversity, unite humanity with a living new language, rule, passion, faith, tradition. But obviously the key one being number one.
Maintain humanity under 500 million people, and we're at 7 billion people
substantially over that number.
Substantially.
And so people will come up, I see this all the time, where people come up and deface the stones, saying, not today, Satan, and stuff like that, where, because obviously whoever put this up has a desire a goal to get down to 500 million people, which is the eradication of billions and billions and billions of people.
When we're going to drop in, Fauci juice. Yeah. Call it the Fauci juice. And we're going to drop in population.
We already are.
We already are, because you have the largest generation that we've known ever to be born was the baby boomers.
Baby boomers, yeah.
And so I think 1 billion baby boomers worldwide are retiring this decade.
Which is crazy to think about how that's going to affect everything
else too. It will be the largest wealth transfer ever. Because and that's partly why I think, on top of inflation and everything else, why we have unemployment or employment going up, jobs offered going up.
Yes.
Is because you have a decreasing population. Our birth rate's not surpassing our death rate. And that's I think the first time in China that's happened too. Their death rate has surpassed their birth rate.
Right.
They're extraordinary, aren't they? Like super bad.
Yeah.
And they've been harping on that train for a while to try and get that, where I know they had the population where you could only have so many kids.
Yeah, and that ended up so what they would do is they'd kill the women. So they'd have a girl, and they'd kill the girl because you're not going to make they're not going to help your family, because a man, they could work in the fields or whatever and at least supply for their family. So it created an imbalance.
Right.
So there's a large portion of Chinese men that are not going to have babies. They just can't.
Because not enough women.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not a good time either, because men, when they get upset, women usually, when they get upset, utilize other means to get back, but men like to
just
just
wanna
be aggressive. Like, They're like, why can't I get this or whatever?
Right.
Or they turn to other avenues like homosexuality or whatever.
Right.
And like you see that in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, I saw somewhere where it was like there's $10 million or 10 million job openings right now, and there's 6 million people who can fill those jobs. And
Unemployed.
Like
Yeah, unemployed.
Well, and then
unemployed. Like
I can't. I don't
well-
blame the people that are unemployed not taking them either. Just because it's like you see the media scaring everyone. Like, well, it's not even scaring. It's like they're not reporting on it, but people know it. It's inflation. You have everything else going up in price, and it's like, why aren't wages going up?
Oh, dude, wages haven't gone up in a decade.
Yeah, well, longer than that.
Yeah.
Slightly, but not in correlation with how much our inflation rises or the value of our dollar.
There's this website called "What the Fuck Happened in 1971."
Well, what the fuck happened in 1970?
We about to find out.
That is
We're about to find out.
1971 is when Nixon removed us from the gold standard.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was
And so
down
what
from
happened after that was here's wages.
Oh, God.
Productivity continually increased, but our compensation for productivity is not.
Right.
And this is just saying, like, this was and to me, this is just a point where you see people start to take control of the money supply. Because it's like, and this just goes through like a large turning point of America is when we removed us from our gold standard. Income growth, that stopped. And don't get me wrong, like, part of this reason is that we doubled the workforce in the 70s. The third wave feminism doubled it, made everyone so it's definitely going to stagnate for a little bit, but not to this point, not to this level.
Right.
this is a control of the funds in the entire world.
100%.
Because it's like, who was it? Rothschild said in the early 1800s, I'm not quoting him directly, but it was on the lines of, I care not who is the king or queen of England. I only care who controls the money supply. Mm-hmm. I can look up the quote.
They're the ones supplying the money.
And he even said that. He's like, I am.
Yeah, Rothschild Central Bank right there.
Dude.
It is, give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws.
Yep.
Yeah, that's...
And that's like...
That's got everybody's best interest at heart.
Yeah.
For sure.
Exactly. And, I mean, we can bitch about it as much as we can, but it's like the ones who are just like, I'm just going to try to make the best of what's happening right now are the ones that are definitely still going to get ahead.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you got to just have that mindset in itself is what's needed
Yeah, exactly.
to move forward.
Because only the strong-willed are going to persevere through all of this.
It's that testosterone theory.
Yeah, the testosterone. The civilizations rise and fall with the testosterone rates.
100%.
And those are low.
Oh, yeah. They're in the gutter.
Yeah, dude. Purposefully.
Until at least to a point where,
I know, yeah.
Purposefully, that way.
I agree.
it is.
Why do we spray all our food with pesticides and GMOs? And,
Why is there a giant push for soy-based products?
Yeah.
Well, how did
ridiculous.
if you go back in history, what was one of the plans of the Spanish conquistadors? It was to demasculate the men. So then whenever they go, they would try to do certain ways to demasculate the men, make them do stupid shit or whatever, because then they won't fight back.
Yep.
Because if you make the men docile, they're like I was saying earlier, they're the aggressive ones. You make all the men docile, they're not going to rebel.
Right.
That, and you do that. And what's the old famous Roman quote where you give them a circus and bread and they'll never rebel?
Exactly. Well, it even goes to the strong men create good times create weak men create hard times
Isn't that the testosterone theory?
Yeah, and that's it's the Strauss-Howe generational theory, if you're ever interested about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's like how civilizations go through 4 generation cycles. And that's we've at least gone that way since Enlightenment. But what I've noticed from what I've read on history is that, and this gives me so much hope, is that we've naturally, not even that someone has tried to, like someone's just put the idea out there, that humans naturally try to decentralize things. So what was the Enlightenment era? that was the decentralization of knowledge that took it away from the church and brought it to science. Then you had the freedom movement of America. You had America come out and say, we don't think that a king or queen should ever rule all of the people. And then it moved away from that. And this is why I'm big on cryptos, because this is the financial side of it.
Right, that breakaway.
And there's a lot to it.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
a whole,
very
whole
much
separate
to it.
podcast.
Yeah.
Just
I know.
Oh my God.
So what do you got there?
Yeah.
What kind
Yeah,
of stuff?
okay.
Why don't we dive into
We'll
your?
dive into the COVID narrative here.
I would love to hear this, because
All right.
I just haven't done as much research as I should, just because it's hard nowadays.
It's a part-time job, man.
It is.
If you want to devote that much time to understanding everything.
Exactly.
I do want to point something out, Jeff. We bring up some of these like I hate calling them conspiracy theories now.
Just call them news flashes.
News flashes, whatever.
News flashes.
But I bring stuff up at work to Jeff, and like he looks like he wants to say something. He just doesn't want to go down that hole again.
Yeah.
because he was down that hole.
Oh yeah, man.
Deep and dark down
That's
there.
who.
Dark,
Think
yeah.
about who made the word conspiracy theory.
Right.
CIA.
man. Yeah.
I love it. We all See, this makes me happy,
That's
because
common knowledge at this point.
exactly.
You know? Well, for those who are paying attention.
Exactly.
anyways.
Yeah.
Those who aren't still asleep at the wheel.
There's a lot of those people, but yeah. Why don't we
So-
hop into this?
Yeah, so Robert Malone, we talked about him a little bit earlier. This is what kicked him off of Twitter.
Okay.
And several other people. Obviously, you saw the smear campaign that went on against Dr. Peter McCullough. It was like our most. I don't know if you watched that podcast.
I
with
watched
Rogan.
parts of it.
He's like the most published cardiologist
is in the world.
in the world,
Yeah.
and until he started spreading misinformation,
Yeah.
and then now he's just a scumbag of the earth.
Well,
you know,
see-
that just doesn't know anything.
Like, it's a little off track, but that's like what aggravates me is that, yeah, you can it's a lot of gatekeeping, because it's like they make it seem like the average everyday person can't research things that a doctor researches.
Right.
And it's like, no, we can. We have the
We have
internet.
the same access to that. man.
Exactly.
Excuse your God complex while I use the most powerful search engine tool
Exactly.
on the planet. Right?
And it's like they're trying to make it seem like you're not allowed to think these things because you're not qualified. And it's
Right.
like, no.
That and I feel like they make it intentionally hard to find so the common person
That's what
can't
I'm saying.
access the information within a reasonable time frame unless you're spending extensive amount of hours or
Exactly.
research into it.
Right.
And obviously, you've done a little bit
Obviously,
of research.
yeah. So-
Well, and this is like why we wanted why we
Yeah.
kind of did the podcast, because everyone has their own stories
Right.
and whatever.
And this is what I mean, I am not one to tell people how to live their lives.
No, yeah.
At any means. I mean, like, I got my own shortcomings. I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm also very much the type of person where it's leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
And don't tell me how to live my life. And I won't tell you how to live yours.
Well, at least you're big enough to admit when you're failing or whatever,
Right,
where
yeah.
you have like Fauci that's like, I'm the biggest man on
yeah,
earth.
dude.
Like,
An attack on Dr. Fauci's attack on science
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
oh
Yeah,
boy,
it
that's
is.
not good.
Right? And so, like, this really struck a nerve with me when it really, when it first started happening. And I'll admit, like, the narrative changes so fast, especially, I say that fast, but it's been 2+ years. But, at first it just seemed very much like a political movement, but, you gotta remove that and just look at it for what it is. And purely, conspiracy theories aside, purely based on the Pfizer trial data is what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
And the shortcomings of it. Okay. So, obviously, doctor-patient relationship should be that way. You should be able to deal directly with your doctor and be able to have that personalized care. But the thing that we're missing is informed consent,
yeah.
which we know, if you don't know, Nuremberg Code,
Yep.
number one.
Nuremberg trials, man.
For those who don't know what the Nuremberg Code is a set of laws, medical laws put in place after World War II, Nazi Germany experimenting on the Jewish population on what you're allowed and not allowed to do on scientific medical experiments. So informed consent is number one on it. You cannot have, or you have to have informed consent, and you can't have coercion. So every time they say, hey, take the vaccine to get your job
That's
or keep your job,
coercion.
that's
Coercion,
coercion
yeah.
every
You
time.
can't do
So
that.
we're missing free and open scientific disclosure and conversation.
Well, and that's a bigger deal than you're making it.
No,
That's a massive deal.
Like the
Huge
fact
deal.
that you're going against the people are going against the Nuremberg trials. Like that's a huge deal. Because we saw, I mean, we've read about it. I'm guessing we've heard about it at least of like the atrocities that the Nazis did.
Right.
Like we do not want that to happen again.
And I don't mean to just glance over it, but like I've been saying that from the beginning.
No, yeah,
you know
and
what I mean?
it gets to the point where you're like, how many times are people even going to listen anymore?
Right.
Like,
So
Continually beating a dead horse.
that's
with
a
the
big
same
deal.
information,
Like, and
man.
I'm
It's
glad you
massive.
brought that up. Yeah.
And I'll circle back to that. I'll Pisaki right on that. Yeah. So this presentation that Malone was presenting on was put together by an alliance of over 500 independent Canadian doctors, scientists, healthcare practitioners, as well as other doctors from around the world. And so they put this together, and he was talking about this, and this is what got him kicked off of Twitter. Not mass formation psychosis, none of that conversation, strictly talking about this. So what is... Oh, I guess before I go to that, I got to make sure I stay on track here. I'm very ADD, so
No, you're good.
Yeah, dude,
We
you're
like
good.
that.
Yeah.
ADD
So-
is putting it lightly.
So I'm going to dive into this presentation that they gave, which in my opinion conclusively shows an increased risk of illness and death for vaccinated group compared to the placebo group. And now this is strictly just off of the test that they used to get their approval. For example, there were 20 total deaths in the vaccinated group versus 14 total deaths in the placebo group.
No shit.
With, that's nearly double the amount of cardiovascular deaths among the vaccinated. So this is just a blanket statement before I even get into the data here.
Right.
So there's just issue after issue here. They unblinded the trial participants. So you mix your data pool, which you're not supposed to do.
Right.
They reported, everybody probably heard the term 90% efficacy of the vaccine.
Yeah.
Remember how they, it's 90% or 95%.
What is it now?
That's the thing is they list that, but they use that specific percentage because it skews the data.
100%
and I'll
skews
circle
it.
back to that and then explain why it skews the data there. Because it's more of 0.84% is what it actually is.
Not 90.
Yeah, 0.84.
Less than 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll get back to there. And that and like,
So it went from 90.
well,
So the reality is it was 0.84.
they use that percentage correctly, but they chose that percentage because it shows it as 90%. Or I'll get to it.
Yeah,
down
okay.
there.
I'm sorry.
Keep them on track.
Yeah. All right. So not only that, but they have obviously we've all heard of vaccine side effects. That was the other thing that got me suspended was talking about vaccine side effects besides the heart inflammation because these are safe and effective and I've gone through many tests to ensure their safety and effectiveness. Blah, 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 blah. I've heard that. I don't know how many times I got that little bar that pops up on my
Misinformation.
and if I go through my activity on Instagram, other than like follow request or friend request, all it is COVID flags. Like
When you know you're shadow banned, you're shadow banned at that point.
100%,
Once you start getting the misinformation, and that's upsetting to me.
You know you're hitting somewhere right. Like,
Yeah.
You know you're
You're
pretty
above the
right
target.
if
Above
you're
the target,
yeah.
I mean, there's hundreds of truth quotes. Like the truth will eventually set everyone free or whatever.
Right.
And this is what's happening right now.
Instagram really pisses me off. I got beef with Instagram.
Get on Gab.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. I need to
Get her.
I'm also waiting
Get
for
her.
Not get her. Don't get on
don't
get her.
get her.
It's a scam.
No, because
it?
what happened was get her. And this is, I'm sorry.
No, we'll get it.
The Getter, why I said don't get on Getter is because they marketed themselves as a free speech platform, and there's this kid called Nick Fuentes, and he's a white nationalist, whatever. I don't even care it. Regardless of what his opinion is, that shouldn't shape of how you judge him as a person. But he was immediately banned on Getter for having something in his bio. I think he put the N-word or something, and he obviously did that on purpose, like because he was testing the waters, and they banned him right away. And so Timcast, you ever heard of Timcast?
Yeah.
So that's a
Tim
Tim Pool.
right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Tim Pool. Oh, okay, yeah.
He hit on this. He actually interviewed the Getter or had him on his podcast, the Getter CEO, and he asked the Getter CEO like, why did you take this person off? And he said, well, it's just, he kind of just gave the normal
PR speech.
PR speech, whatever. And it was just like, Tim called him out. He's like, I don't that's not an argument. Like if you say you're a free speech platform and you're not like, if he would have just said like
inciting violence,
I just don't want white nationalists on my platform or something. But no, but he tried to like go around beat around the bush.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting for True Social to come out, and then we'll test that water before I switch to anything.
And reason why I say is because Gab was they have.
Is that Andrew Torba?
I believe, yeah. And I've heard him talk about it, and what happened was he created Gab.
Mm-hmm.
They came to him and said, you can't be on the Apple or Google Play Store if you don't ban people that we want.
Right.
Because so he said, weren't they hosted on Amazon servers?
Yeah, they were hosted on Amazon servers, and so he said, fuck off, like, take us off.
Right.
And they continually grew, and then they had like AWS came after him, and they took it off that. And then they had the payment processors come after him, like PayPal and such, took him off of that. And then they had the banks come after him and take him all, cancel all of his accounts, whatever. And he was saying the only reason why our company still exists is because of Bitcoin.
No shit.
Because he's like, the only way we got funding was through Bitcoin. And it's like, and that's what I want to see. Yeah.
And they had to have significant expenses because they built their own server
exactly.
once they got deplatformed.
Oh, yeah. And that shit gets expensive.
Especially when you got millions of users that you're trying to control the data flow of.
But, so that was a side of the point.
So, well, I'll get obviously I've caught my fair share of red flags from Instagram, so they can.
Well, hopefully, I'll end up putting this one on. I think this will be our first one we get on, like, Library and Rumble and all of them. Because I don't want this shit to get, like, don't get me wrong, we might get banned from YouTube or whatever. I don't care at this point.
Well, add us to the list with everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. This is just fun. I like talking to people.
No,
so
yeah.
I don't care.
Well, I'll see everybody else in the gulags, fellas. I'll see you there. It's going to be lit, I'll tell you. It's gonna be lit. We're going to have one of us needs to bring DJ equipment.
Yeah, right.
So, first off, I got to give a shout out to Kanoka the Great, who's an account that I've been following. He's one of the most comprehensive people who, like, didn't start out as doing this for any other reason than spreading, his truth and his analysis of things. And he is just so comprehensive and in-depth in his review of things before he ever speaks, which is why I follow him.
Yeah,
so, so I got to give him a shout out. Don't know him personally, but man, truther and puts out quality information. So he's the one who spread this.
Can you
COVID?
What's the
alliance.
handle? If any listeners out there want to
Kanoka the Great,
spell it. How do you spell that out?
All right, let me pull that up here. See if the Insta still hasn't banned him yet.
Got a new burner.
Yeah, a new phone. Who dis? I got one bar in this basement.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
It's KN something. Yeah, well, I ain't got service, so we'll circle back to that.
Yep, no worries.
Okay, so. We're going to dive into this test report here first of what they did and how they conducted their studies. But what is...
Is it this guy?
Yep.
That's not it. That is not it. It's like KNOE, something like that. There's an A or another E in there somewhere. I'm terrible at spelling, so I'm the last
we'll
person
figure it out.
probably.
Yeah, no worries.
So what is like physicians' number one rule? First, do no harm. Like that's rule number one. But yet people are just ignoring the evidence of what we're doing. Like even like you see everybody out there, protesting now, like, oh, the unvaccinated shouldn't get health care. Like what is the rule? Everybody's entitled to health care.
Health care for all, whatever.
Itself, and first do no harm, which those are fucking
out of the door.
So get rid of those. We don't need those apparently anymore in 2022. So first, I want to talk about the hierarchy of scientific evidence.
Okay.
So like how you rank evidence in the scientific community in terms of like what the Pfizer did. So you have levels from foundational science, then you have level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And level 1 is your a random control trial is level 1 evidence versus foundational evidence is like animal research.
Okay.
So obviously level 5 and lower is more of opinion and speculation versus level 1 is, backed up by the highest level of evidence.
Hard data.
Hard data, that's right.
So 1 being the greatest, 5 being the least.
Yeah,
Correct.
and then
Okay.
foundational evidence is basically opinion pieces.
Gotcha.
So
Speculation.
yeah, speculation. So when we're talking about providing things that are either safe or harmful for a human body, you really want to rely on the best evidence, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it
sure.
makes
Yeah.
like it's common sense. So, you would think so.
You would think so.
I would hope so.
Right. So, you see level 1, that's your gold standard of evidence that you would want them to use. Models, which you've probably heard throughout, our models are projecting
Our models.
are projecting 300 million dead
Yeah.
within 2020.
Hey,
Obviously,
yeah.
you heard that report.
People don't talk about that at all anymore.
So obviously that's level 5 or lower.
Yeah.
Evidence right there. So opinions are basically worthless. In terms of this,
It
because
makes
medical
sense.
example.
In terms of science, that
Yes.
would make sense.
yes. So obviously you have to make an opinion or a hypothesis,
Yep.
and then you move forward and you go to that
Test
level
your
1 evidence.
hypothesis.
That's
this
right.
is the scientific method we all learned about in grade
Yes.
school.
I
We
think
were
so.
12 years old when we learned this. Yeah.
Right?
And it's just like, whoop,
Yep.
anymore.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's dumb. It's dumb. So first, we're going to talk about relative risk reduction versus absolute risk reduction. So this is where that 95% comes into play.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I can't really show you the video. So what you have is Pfizer reported its vaccine to show 95% efficacy, and that's the numbers that we heard. And then
Constantly.
Constantly, but as time progressed, and I have a video I'll show you guys at the end of this if I can dig it up, where it shows like how fast the news articles changed, and they literally dropped it by like 1% each time. And
No
it goes
shit.
95, the next one's 94, 93, 92, 91, 90, 90, and it just literally goes on for like 2 years to
Just-
where it's like 30%,
Boiling the frog alive.
Yes.
So when you hear the 95% efficacy, it sounds like it protects you 95% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, perfect. That's high amount.
Right.
But that's not actually what that number means. The 95% refers to relative risk reduction, but it doesn't tell you how much your overall risk is reduced by the vaccination. So for that, we need absolute risk reduction is what they should actually be using. So in the Pfizer trial, 8 out of 18,198 people who were given the vaccine developed COVID-19. In the unvaccinated placebo group, 162 people got it. Okay.
So you would think that would mean that the vaccinated are less likely to get COVID, but they still do.
Which it means that even without the vaccine, the risk of contracting COVID-19 was extremely low.
Yeah, you're talking about 160 people is like
it's
less than 1%.
0.88% is what it comes out to be. Okay. So we already have an extremely low risk of contracting.
And then
in the first
compared
place.
to 8 out of, that's like 0.001.
Yeah. Sure.
But we're talking about under 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Minuscule amounts.
0.04 for the vaccinated is what the percentage is.
That's
But with the vaccine, you're reduced to 0.04. So the net benefit or the absolute risk reduction that you've been offered with Pfizer vaccine is actually 0.84%. Which is the difference between 0.88 and 0.04.
Yeah.
So that 95% refers to the relative difference between 0.88, the unvaccinated, and 0.04, the vaccinated.
So this is a giant key in that data will not be manipulated. It's just said in a way that's manipulated.
Sure.
Which is, I'm going to diverge a little bit here, but that video, if you look back at one of the original videos of Bill Gates sitting at his desk talking about vaccines, he's got a book sitting in his stack at his desk. And you know what that book is titled?
I remember this.
How to Lie with Statistics.
Yes. I remember that.
Right in front of us, So we see that difference at, 0.04 or 0.88 minus 0.04, you're at actually, 0.084. So that 95% risk reduction is well known to be misleading once you actually look at it, which is why the FDA actually recommends using absolute risk reduction instead of relative risk reduction.
Well, this goes back to the headline deal. Is like it's all about the headlines now. People don't read into the things. This is huge.
Yeah,
which
begs the question. How many people would have chosen to get the vaccine if they understood it actually offered less than 1% benefit?
Oh, no one would.
Probably not very many people.
Right?
I mean, yeah.
A lot less.
A lot less.
A lot less.
95, 1%. Big difference.
No,
you know?
it definitely is.
So,
Dude, that's nuts. I haven't heard this before.
And this is coming straight from, and I'll pass this to you. This is straight from the research summary on the safety and efficacy of the BNT162b2 mRNA COVID vaccine, which
I'll
is
get
Pfizer's
that. So
vaccine.
I'll link that. I'll try to link that in the description.
And I'll pass this entire
presentation. on?
this entire
okay, yeah, I'll link
slideshow
it
to you, and so everybody can look through it for themselves. So, mind-boggling. First,
Whoa.
yeah, whoa. Step one, whoa, yeah. So
Dude, that's just,
which is
that blows my fucking mind.
and that's
though.
just
You
step
go
one.
From,
That's step one out of
dude, that's
fucking
so.
40.
Just think about that though. That you're promoting something at 95% efficacy, and it's not anywhere. Like we're
Not
talking
even
about
close.
95% to less than 1%.
Yeah.
95 times less than what you would like think of if you would saw that article, the headline or whatever.
All right.
And that's
Completely
back to the
misleading.
lies with statistics.
So pretty much for people who like don't understand what's going on. So pretty much there was 18,000 people who took the vaccine, 18,000 who didn't, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yep.
Something like that. And then 101
Or it might have been
100
split or whatever,
but-
half and half,
But
whatever.
106 of them who weren't vaccinated got COVID, and then 8 of them got COVID who were vaccinated.
Correct.
They did the fact of they did the percentage of 106 to 8, not actual the whatever
large
number,
percentage.
the large
Well,
percentage to actual things. That's
Well,
what they're saying.
And you have to take into account
Yeah.
like how low the risk is to begin with,
Right.
yeah.
and which they didn't, obviously.
Right.
So this, and you heard me say earlier about the unblinding of the trial participants. So this is where I'm going to go to next.
And that's looked down upon.
Yes, yes. So, well, I mean,
Very much
you just,
so.
how do you track it?
You can't.
Exactly.
We also
Well, and
gotta
that's
think that
purposeful.
Exactly.
Pfizer is one of the most corrupt.
Hey, while you got your up here, say who in the United States has paid the largest criminal fine in history?
Is that Pfizer?
Let's see what Google says. Actually, it's Google, so they might censor it.
Oh, it's
Pfizer.
Oh,
Hey!
even Google can't hide that one. You know? Weird. What did
That's
they pay
like,
that? What did they pay that fine for? Right there.
lying about their trials, right? Their findings in a trial.
Well, see, here's the other thing is like they're trying to like prove this wrong.
Yeah, for everybody who doesn't already know, do not use Google if you're actually trying to find the truth.
DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
I've even heard there's a new Joe Rogan one that just came out, and he was talking about DuckDuckGo isn't even the best
No, it's not. There's
because
a whole bunch of other
it pretty much takes just a bunch of data from pretty much
So
Google.
in 2012,
3 billion.
$3 billion in criminal and civil criminal
Yes.
Criminal, dude. Criminal
Criminal.
and civil. Like there's a
for the
preponderant-
unlawful promotion of drugs. This is why
That
I think we should.
weren't FDA approved.
This is why we
They-
should go to
they
the
gotta-
UK's route or EU and ban all. You can't advertise pharmaceuticals
straight to the
Yeah.
customer or
No,
the end
for,
user.
that's not-
for the thing about criminal and civil, if they got criminally charged, that is pretty much 100% that they did like because like it's civil, it's a preponderance of evidence.
Yeah.
And the criminal is for unreasonable doubt. Like,
Yeah, so there's evidence. to
There's
go against it.
100% evidence that you fucked up.
And now this is only just the largest fine. Like if you actually go through Pfizer's
Dude, they probably have
history,
hundreds.
No, I did a whole Instagram
Depth,
thing where actually,
in-depth.
yeah, they took like 6 out of my 15 pages down and just
Of
removed
course.
them on like what their largest fines were paid out and why they were paid out. And it
I need to
had a
set you
litany
up.
of
Let me
issues.
know because I'll set you up with a website just so you can like
Just
post
drop-
onto it.
Just drop it to you.
Yeah,
Dude,
because
nice.
that way it's like
Nice.
Jacob knows it's easy. I'll set it up so it's
Super easy, dude.
Yeah.
Super easy.
I'll set it up just so you can just post this shit because I would like to know this shit.
And
Absolutely.
it like goes straight from like lying, misleading investors, bribing people to get
And
the
we have to
favorable
be
test results.
we have to be careful about they're not technically lying.
right.
They aren't
They're
technically
just
lying. They're just manipulating
it
how they're
to
saying
where it Not necessarily true.
Yeah, well, in this regard, but
not
when
giving
And
you
when in this regard, this is not.
They're not
they're
giving you
lying.
all of the
They got
information.
proved
There's
in court that they're lying.
these are
Here's
just the ones
5%
that
of
got caught
information.
on.
Yeah,
too.
these are just
the ones that got caught on.
See, who knows
So, like,
how much.
Every time you see commercial, and like nowadays you watch a commercial, it's like every 4 out of 6 commercials is a pharmaceutical
that's what I
commercial.
mean.
And but yet you also see every time you hear that commercial, it'll be like, "Did you or a loved one take Zantac?"
Yeah.
You know, something like that. There's because Zantac
And
for
the-
prime
the-
example.
Just go back on
Every
how,
one of
like,
those was FDA approved.
Just go back on the on how many they didn't get caught on. The vast majority of crimes do not get caught. Well, like a drunk driver, they probably drink and drive about 80 times before you actually get caught.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
What was it? There was like
Breaking the
there
law.
was like a drug. There was like a there was like a drug in the 60s or 70s that they misrepresented, and it caused like stillborns. I forget which
Didn't
one.
it cause the kids with like little arms
Yeah,
and stuff like
yeah.
that? Started with a T, if I remember right.
You know what I'm talking
I do
about. And
know.
like,
Shoo.
you probably could delve in this deeper, but I know it's going to take us like a while if we
That's
could
actually
actually
one of
figure
the
it out.
drugs that they got criminally charged for that I threw on the list.
Oh,
for them
seriously?
getting- yeah,
Man.
yeah.
That's what I mean. They're like
It caused all kinds of like birth
defects,
birth
whatever.
defects, yep.
And they were all like beforehand. It was like, oh, this is not dangerous, or whatever.
Just like when our doctors were promoting cigarettes back in the 70s, you know, or DDT, you know, keeps
Yeah.
flies away off your kids, may cause birth defects, but you know, that's your problem,
Right.
not Pfizer's. Yeah.
But
So-
continue.
Yeah, so unblinding the study. So in this slide, we're going to talk about unblinding the study after 2 months because you have an inoculated group and a placebo group, each with about 21,000 participants, okay? They begin phase 3 trials in July of 2020. The study was blind, which means the participants didn't know which group they were in. Okay. So they have no idea whether they got the placebo or not. It was supposed to be a blinded trial for 3 years until May 2nd, 2023.
3 years.
3 years.
Now, obviously, we're in January of 2022, and that would mark the end of phase 3 clinical trial. Instead, after only 2 months of trial data, they unblinded the study. And for those who don't know what that means they told all of the placebo and inoculation group participants which group they were in and offered the placebo group the option of moving over and getting the shot. So most of them took Pfizer up on that offer, and the vast majority of the placebo group moved into the inoculated group. Therefore, after 2 months, there is no longer a control group to compare the inoculated group to, and there's no longer any way to assess long-term safety or effectiveness.
Because they removed the placebo group.
Well, yeah.
So, but there's no long-term safety effects. So don't even bother looking into that.
And this is, I want to make the point that like, at least I am. It's like I'm not against vaccines at all.
Sure.
I'm against
This one.
I'm against
misdirecting
choice.
that too. Misdirecting and plus choice. Like you should always give them the ability to choice.
Absolutely.
And I went into it, I just had a kid. I didn't.
So you same as Jacob, because that opened my eyes up to like the vaccines. I don't have a kid, so how the hell am I going to know what the vaccines are giving kids?
Yeah.
And like Jacob told me, they were mixing vaccines to make people.
So the polio and the Hep B.
Yep.
Because we were like, well, why? Yeah. Why do I have to give him Hep B? Like, I don't have Hep B. Emma doesn't have Hep B. No one in our family has Hep B. It's transmitted through blood, and
They might get it.
what they might get. But so we're like, so why are we going to give them to them? So Emma went there and they're like, oh, here, this one's a polio and Hep B one. So it's combined. So it's like, well, I want them to get the polio one because I really don't want them to get polio.
Sure.
Yeah,
but
you
Hep B's
definitely
already in the Hep polio one. Like,
can't
why are they
separate
doing
it.
You can't separate it.
Yeah.
And that's the worst because you're talking about a vaccine that has been proven time and time again to versus one that I'm guessing has not been proven.
Right.
Because
I don't know anything.
Polio is a real if you don't have a polio vaccine, I would say get a polio vaccine because like my dad's told me about he started getting polio and he started losing his ability to walk when he was a kid and then like got the polio vaccine and it fixed him.
Right.
Yeah.
Like stuff that's been tried time and time again, I'm all for that stuff. And that's the key is like time and time again. It's been tested for a longer period of time.
Long-term efficacy.
We're talking about something that
and aren't these vaccines like actually like just dead cells that they put in you?
The old vaccine.
The old
vaccine. Yeah.
These are not if we want to get in linguistics, these are not technically vaccines or inoculants.
I'm glad you said that because that'll be somewhere along my Pasaki journey of circling right back.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
But I will say, as a new father, I guess, and this is fringe conspiracy here but after seeing this, before I even say that, knowing how half-assed they've been doing things.
Yep.
Quite frankly, I don't trust anything until I look into it myself.
Sure.
Dude, that's the most dangerous thing too, is that what this is going to cause distrust.
Yes.
And that's what I mean is like the polio vaccine. It's like the only way that you can have polio, the only way you have no one have polio is by having at least 90 or 70 to 90% of the population vaccinated for that.
Right.
Because that leaves some space to where you get herd immunity. And these are like real problems, like actual problems. Like polio is not something like COVID or something. Polio is you lose your ability to walk.
It's pretty drastic.
That works in normal circumstances, but separate from this podcast, I encourage you to look into what happened in Africa
with their vaccines.
With Bill Gates' rollout of polio.
Oh, yeah, he sterilized quite a bit of the population.
Well, not only that, but he spread polio like a wildfire there for a brief period of time.
What?
Yeah.
We'll go, okay.
Yeah, that's that's podcast number 2.
Well, just like for a second, think about the rationale. A vaccine that is filled with something of the same virus that's dead, giving it to you, give it a weakened version. Common sense says that makes sense that you're not going to get it. Your body will be able to build immunity to it
and fight it without it actually like.
Yeah, this is all common, rational thinking, rational ways of thinking. Like,
no, that's outlawed nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do that.
And like we're talking about something that's not dead cells. It's not dead whatever.
No. Yeah. It's so I obviously have been looking into a lot, and even some of the vaccines that my daughter was on the schedule for, I ended up finding the approval test data on what they did to actually test the participants. And I sent my wife a video because we were both, having a discussion about what we wanted to do. And the amount of side effects that were in the trial data that showed up was astronomical.
Yeah.
And to where I'm like, what the fuck would I give my daughter that?
Yeah.
Let me know after this podcast which ones were those.
Yeah, I'll send you that one. I still got a lot of research to do on it, but for me, I've just paused her schedule until I can do more research on the upcoming ones.
Well, and this is like in the crypto community, if you can't find you can trust the person saying what they're saying, they always say DYOR, which is do your own research.
Yep.
So it's like, if you don't trust what we're saying, and like I trust what you're saying because you brought the damn presentation.
I encourage everybody to research
seeing it with
this
my eyes, so like I
don't take me on my word for it. Look at it yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what the key is if there's anything you pull from this podcast, it's read about what you're doing to your own self.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. I can't encourage that enough.
Which is even sad that we have to tell people that, right? I know. Come on, man.
That you might as well be flagged for spreading misinformation for telling people to think for themselves.
Right.
So the next problem I have with this trial report is the vaccinated group shows an increased risk of illness. Pfizer's data before the trial was unblinded showed significant increase in illness for the vaccinated group versus the placebo group. You won't actually find it in the report itself. You have to dig into the supplementary appendix to find it. There you'll find 5,241 related adverse events in the vaccinated group versus 1,311 related to the placebo.
5,000?
Compared to 1,300. Actually, 5,200 compared to 1,300.
Dude, I had no idea about this stuff.
All right, so
This is
that's
making me
just
a little sick.
just shitty that you hide it in the supplementary appendix.
Hide it in
know
the,
what I mean?
like,
So for severe adverse events, there were 262 in the vaccinated group versus 150 in the placebo group. And for serious adverse events, there were 127 in the vaccinated versus 116 in the placebo. Because obviously people still go about their lives. They still got other
they
problems
might have
that
other
happen.
things that could occur with them.
But when you look at that, for the in a summary, the vaccinated group, there's a 300% increase risk of related adverse events, a 75% increase to severe adverse events, and 10% increase in serious adverse events.
Dude, that's
300% increase in related adverse events compared to the placebo group. I don't find that suspicious at all.
No.
So we should probably just move on before that gets any worse, you know? So and then, like, as I read, in my opinion, this just gets
worse.
This establishes a pattern.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's a big problem. If you didn't realize it, that's a big problem that we just talked about, you know?
And this is why I was stressing, do your own research on this stuff.
And this
it took a little bit, it took some time to probably find this stuff.
way more time than I
But
wanted
the
to spend.
amount of information that you just told us,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling to me.
Well, there is no sleep in the great meme war. You know?
This man is the general meme war.
Active duty, you know.
Lieutenant Pepe.
Reporting for service. And I know, like, obviously, I'm just trying to do my part of passing this information along. And you know, this is hours of my own research just to find it and review it to make and cross-reference it to make sure it checks out. Not to mention all the hours that went into the people who wrote it.
Yeah.
You know, that go into it. So not only is there a massive increased risk of illness, there is also an increased risk of death. Pfizer's data, slide number 11, also shows an increased risk of death for the vaccinated group. Before the trial was unblinded, there was 15 deaths in the vaccinated versus 14 in the placebo. Okay, so just a difference of 1. Mm-hmm. After the trial was unblinded, there were 5 more deaths in the vaccinated group, and 3 of those deaths were from the original vaccinated group before the trial was unblinded. So 2 deaths had crossed over.
2 were from the original placebo group.
Yep. So in summary, there's 20 total deaths. The vaccinated group has 14. The vaccinated group has 14, or a group versus 14. 20 deaths in the vaccinated, 14 in the placebo is what it ultimately equals out to. In the vaccinated, 9 were attributed to something that I warned about and got suspension on Instagram for, cardiovascular events. 9 died from cardiovascular events. 4 were attributed to cardiovascular in the placebo. So obviously you can see like the difference. Now, we're talking in small numbers in the first place. We're talking 14 people versus 20 people. Mm-hmm. So obviously this is an extremely small pool for something that's going for billions of doses that are going to be given.
Right.
So, but I mean, whether it shows minor or not, it's still an increase. I mean, obviously you need to compare the data versus, 100 or 10,000 versus 10,000 to see where it's actually at on a larger scale. But just from their trial data alone, it shows an increased risk of death.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's like my whole thing on the whole vaccines and whatever is that if you're not vaccinated, well, obviously this is showing if you're vaccinated, you have a lot of adverse reactions that could possibly happen.
Sure.
You could also probably have these reactions if you're unvaccinated too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because
like,
if I live a shitty lifestyle, I'm going to have cardiovascular problems.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So this is just an analysis of the data they chose to use to get their approval. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm trying to show here is you'll see a pattern of missteps that continue along through this entire thing and still got the approval for it, which, and then it progresses past this.
That's not how it's supposed to be.
We show all this even though they have broken protocols, right?
Yeah.
Right. So even though they broke protocols, it still shows an increased risk of death, which if you're trying to do some shitty stuff, be better at it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So with them breaking protocols, you have, in normal circumstances, developing vaccines like, normally about 10-year process at a minimum.
7 to 10 years. Isn't it 7 years? Like they need to research it or test it.
Yeah, there's for example, on this, the timeline on what it would normally be, you normally have 3 years of in vitro animal models. Then you have 2 years of human trials, phase 1, 2 years of human trials, phase 2, and then 3 years of human trials, phase 3 for, first one's for safety dosing, immune response, second's for safety, immune response, and third is for safety and efficacy.
So what is this? Can I see that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go shove this in front of the camera.
Oh, and heck,
I should have just emailed you a presentation.
They're even just shoving in some boosters that they just made yesterday.
Yeah, they don't even know.
Yeah, booster.
So that's your normal process, is this 10-year period. Rarely it can be done as little 5. So obviously, like the 7 period you're talking about, you can compress it, but you still have 5. Us, less than 2.
Well, that's like wasn't that the emergency releases? That's what they
use authorization.
Yep.
So animal testing, skipped it. Phase 1 and 2 combined. After 2 months, phase 2 and 3 emergency use authorization came in. Trials were unblinded. Phase 3 trials are still ongoing until 2023. And we're on booster number 4 in Israel right now. So protocols way the fuck out the window. So little, normally 10, little as 5. They developed it in less than a year. In order to expedite, like I said, they skipped your animal models. Despite all the persistent claim that COVID vaccines safe, don't need to be tested, there's still a lot of safety concerns that I have and still a lot of unknowns about it in general. But I'm not allowed to voice those on anywhere except for here. So what up, guys? So that's another problem that I have with it. Another one, misleading demographics. Okay. So they tested this for the wrong age target population. Who's most susceptible to this?
Old people,
right?
Very sick, yeah.
So why is it that the trial used younger age group for the trial? Okay.
Well, I mean, before you go, why would you want to use younger people for your trial?
Younger, healthier,
exactly,
easier to recover.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So obviously it can skew your data. So they use a younger age group who's not at most risk of COVID-19. So 85% of people who die from COVID are 75 or older.
And have 4 or more comorbidity.
Yes, and we'll get to that as well.
Yep.
Yet only 4% of their trial ages are 75 years or older. 4.4% is 75 in their trial.
That's a little wrong.
Yeah. I mean, because obviously that's a target. You think your target would be 65 and older, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you have 77.9, that's 16 through 64.
And these are not far-fetched assumptions we're making. These are rational thoughts we're
Absolutely.
having. Yeah. Well, I mean, just think about it. Old people in a retirement home, they're a lot more weaker. They can't move. I mean, these are just common sense.
Right.
It should be
I'm
common
just making
sense.
that point.
Yeah. So you got 4%. That's actually the target demographic. Pfizer chose, in my opinion, specifically a younger demographic that would be less likely to need the vaccine, less likely to suffer an adverse event, and more likely to respond well.
Yeah.
Sure.
As the elderly have poor immune responses.
Yeah.
That just happens when you get older. So you got the wrong target demographic for one. But not only that, you have misleading demographics because they're tested on healthy people and we give them to who? Sick people, right? So 95% of all people who have died with COVID-19 in this test, have had at least, or in general, that they were recorded when this was issued, had at least one comorbidity with an average of 4, like you said. So most people are dying with at minimum one comorbidity, if not multiple comorbidities, normally between 1 and 4. Only 21 participants in your trial had comorbidities. Pfizer excluded a list of health conditions on the trial, including pregnant and breastfeeding women. So they say
that seems like a group that you probably would not want to leave out.
Right. Well, I mean, and then when you push the agenda, hey, it's safe and effective for pregnant women.
Yep.
But yet our trial didn't include
We have
any pregnant
no
women.
data to prove that.
Wow,
So,
that's
They pushed hard. They even pushed
Hard.
my.
I remember
flag.
that.
Oh,
red
yeah.
flag. All right.
They
so
pushed hard.
Yeah.
So reiterate, they did not have any pregnant people in their trials.
Or breastfeeding
People in their trials. Yet they're saying
or people
safe
with
and effective
allergies,
for those
psychiatric
people.
conditions, and they did not test immunocompromised people, people with bleeding disorders, people who have been previously tested positive for COVID-19, people who have been prescribed steroids. Therefore, we have no data to make safety claims on people with health conditions that were excluded from the trial.
Yes, you can't say
Wow.
it's
But
safe
yet
and
you
effective
can't.
for
But
them.
you can't have a medical exemption though.
that's
because you have those problems.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to exempt yourself.
You can't literally get a blood clotting. You have a blood clotting disorder, and you can't get a medical exemption from it,
No.
yeah.
even though that's a known side effect.
I mean, it's people are even having a hard time getting religious exemptions
Yeah.
from it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Just,
ridiculous.
Which that's-
it's just ridiculous.
You can't. To me, it's like you're stepping on constitutional rights at that point.
Literally the very
Very
first
much.
one.
Yeah.
The very first
Very
one.
first one. Yeah.
Number one, just like Nuremberg Code. So two number one strikes
Yeah,
right there.
two
you know?
number one.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Two
so-
big number
Number
ones.
one, yeah.
Dude.
I
Right.
mean, you would think so.
One from the war to end all wars, and one from the biggest revolution ever to go on Earth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
But those are just minor in terms of in billions that the people are making here. But so you test these vaccines on healthy, and then you immediately give them to the frailest members of society,
Right.
elderly with multiple health conditions. This is not only unscientific, but this is unethical.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know what red flag we're up to, but at least 5. If not more.
More red flags.
Yes.
At
Yes.
Communist Party parade.
Yeah,
Right.
get your red flags ready. We got a couple more to go. So not only do you have all of that, you have inadequate control groups that exclude natural immunity until recently. Pfizer's clinical trial only observed 2 groups, unexposed and vaccinated. And the unexposed, or it should have, Pfizer's clinical trial only observed 2 groups, the unexposed and vaccinated, and the unexposed and the unvaccinated. Pfizer should have had 2 more, the exposed and vaccinated, and the exposed and unvaccinated, meaning people who've recovered from COVID-19 on naturally and what their natural immune response is to it. They didn't test that at all. The data would have shown if the vaccine was safe for people with natural immunity. They didn't even bother to check into that. And how the vaccines compared to natural immunity, which I will get to. Actually, it's a great time to pull this up.
Well, another
it's at the
point you
bend.
can draw from this is that
we'll come back to that one.
well, another point you can draw from this is that they're acting like this is something that's never been exposed to people, yet they're saying that it's not. It wasn't created.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially when the most recent data out of New York and California, which is 18% of America's population, shows a 6-fold lower chance of contracting COVID with natural immunity.
And didn't Fauci just come out and was like, hey, South Africa didn't get hit as hard because there's probably natural immunity because it's probably one of the lowest vaccinated areas in the country and they all breezed through it.
But you're not allowed to
But you can't
talk about natural immunity.
No.
But Fauci said it.
Yeah.
He did say it. But
I've always
that just
had-
got brushed on the
I've always had a
There's a whole bunch of red flags under this carpet.
Yeah, dude.
I listened to Fauci speak in 2016, maybe? No, 2019, I believe, at my brother's graduation from OSU. And I always thought it was weird when I was hearing him speak. It was just like, I stopped AIDS. I did all this. And it was just like, it wasn't genuine.
No.
Yeah. Well, you guys ever seen the movie Dallas Buyers Club?
Oh, yeah.
You know the one, you know what I'm talking
With,
about? Matthew
yeah,
McConaughey
yeah.
and is it Jared Leto?
Jared Leto.
Yeah.
So in that, have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, but you
Oh,
have.
Highly recommend
You
it.
haven't?
I'm going to watch that.
It's
Was it
just
man.
what a
Dallas-
drastic
was it?
transformation by Matthew McConaughey in the first place. It's almost like sickly how much weight he lost for that movie.
Yep.
But the whole premise of the movie is the man
AIDS.
contracts AIDS.
Okay.
HIV and
Through
AIDS.
shooting up in the arm, I think is how he got it, and probably unprotected sex.
Yep.
In the very beginning, I think he's banging a prostitute or
100%
something.
unprotected sex. Yep.
So he has AIDS and obviously turns his life upside down. So he's trying to get treatment to not die.
Yeah.
And there's this treatment that is extremely cost effective that everybody's trying to use but can't get because it's outlawed in the United States. So he ends up going to Mexico, I believe it is, or South America, and getting this and open some sham, I say sham in air quotes, clinic where basically he's buying these drugs in Mexico and then selling them to people who need them. Because
Correction, he's not selling them. He's selling a subscription to be in the club.
Okay,
so
that's
Dallas
right.
Buyers Club. So he's not actually reselling drugs. He's selling a subscription.
Club membership.
You come in once a week. You get your daily doses. Now, all of these drugs are all homeopathic drugs. They're all not FDA approved. They're, it's not big pharmaceutical companies that are producing them, and these people come after him.
Yeah.
Because
course.
how dare you try and treat
to step
AIDS?
on our toes.
Right.
Yeah.
You're taking money from us. You're actually showing proof that you're recovering. You're defeating the disease.
Yeah.
Oh, man, the movie
Well, this
is phenomenal.
goes back to the gatekeeping. That's just gatekeeping to me.
This is why I bring this up is, who was leading the charge versus AIDS.
Yeah,
right?
it was Fauci.
Fauci, who's outlawing this drug in the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we see conflict of interest across the board all over the place. And that's just an example that you brought up, and it happens to tie right back into this.
Exactly.
For sure.
So they didn't test on the things they shouldn't have tested for. Not only did they not test against natural immunity, they used low-quality science on our hierarchy scale and didn't test biomarkers.
Yeah.
So as we know, there's a long list of vaccine side effects. And actually, I found the Pfizer documents that they were legally required to release, the first 38 or 50 some pages that they were trying to keep under seal for 55 years. And the last 6 pages, single space, top to bottom, is list of known side effects to it. And it's literally 6 pages, single spaced, words I've never even seen before, and it's just, and I'll bring that
it's
up.
ugly.
Yes.
Yeah. So they didn't use biomarkers because we know there's a lot of different things that can happen. So you would think you would use that so you can track, so you can test for adverse events at the subclinical pre-symptom level. This is not only extremely unsafe because symptoms and diseases are typically endpoints of a process. So, you don't just get a disease out of nowhere. It's because of something that brings it along. But that can take months, years, decades to surface. Who's got time for that?
Exactly.
Right? So high-quality science would have tested before and after for D-dimers of evidence of enhanced coagulation, C-reactive proteins for evidence of enhanced inflammation, evidence for cardiac damage, blood oxygen levels, enhanced hypoxia, all kinds of trackers that you would have tracked to see what's causing what, whether it's leading towards the protein that causes Alzheimer's, stuff like that, autoimmune diseases. They should have been tracking biomarkers to have high-quality science from the beginning and would have provided early warning indicators for diseases caused by the vaccine, but we don't have that. So we don't know if there's long-term safety effects, which they claim there isn't any long-term safety effects. So, but how do we know? They didn't test for it.
It's just only 6 pages.
Yeah,
It's just 6 pages.
Just 6 pages.
And if I can pull it up, I'll have you pull it up the screen. It's just absurd to me. Absolutely absurd, but what the hell do I know?
What? That was a 10-year. They tried that 10 years, right?
Is what it's supposed to be.
No, I know. Oh, you didn't get those sarcasm.
You didn't catch the sarcasm?
Yeah.
They did this 10-year study in 1 year.
1 year,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
It was incredible.
Fastest thing I've ever seen in my life. But, we have no long-term safety or side effects, so don't even worry about them.
Well, and that's the main issue, or not even issue I have with it, is that vaccines usually are a long time effector. The results don't come out until
many years after.
down
How
the
long
road.
did it take that drug we were talking about, the little baby side effects?
for
and
people to actually get
birth
on?
effects?
Exactly.
Took years for that to surface. So what did they test for in this data? They tested for what your likelihood of recovery is compared to your placebo group, right? They only tested in terms of COVID-19 when they didn't even think about testing for all cause illness or mortality. So they didn't check to see in the greater scheme of things, is it going to cause more deaths or less deaths? Which seems like it'd be the first thing you'd be testing for.
Exactly.
So
Right.
they use the wrong clinical endpoints by focusing on prevention rather than all-cause illness and mortality. So all-cause illness and mortality should be your clinical endpoints rather than just illness and death with COVID-19. Because obviously if you're saving 10 people from dying from COVID-19, but you killed 600 due to cardiovascular disease, that's obviously
We
more
still
harm
save
than
10
good.
people, though.
But
We still save those same
save
people.
10.
They didn't die of COVID.
Yeah, those 600 people are buried with those windmill blades we were talking about.
Shit,
So
dude.
they didn't test for that. And in order to make sure that they're not causing harm, you need to. This was learned decades ago with cancer trials. For example, cancer drug trial clinical endpoints were switched to all-cause illness and mortality away from did the drug shrink the cancer, because some drugs were not only killing the cancer but the patients themselves. We should have learned this mistake 10 frickin' years ago, but we
Right.
didn't. And they didn't even bother testing for it, which is a huge red flag for me. So number 7.
So,
Yeah, I think we're on 7.
counting.
All right, next problem I have, not tested for spread reduction, which makes the entire vaccine passport unjustified.
Yeah.
Right.
Passports being pushed because they prevent or reduce transmission, but this was never studied in the clinical trials in the first place.
Well, and this goes back to like our whole
And the fact
road to
that
serfdom.
They
This
didn't
is
even
how-
know if it prevented transmission
Yeah.
when they were promoting it. They literally got asked in Congress, does it prevent transmission? They didn't know the answer.
All right.
You mean you don't know the answer? What the hell are you even here for?
Right.
So,
Seems like a pretty basic thing you should know.
but
Right.
Especially for
as we
real
see our
testing.
rap sheet, we see a consistent, almost an intentional series of missteps
Yeah.
to bring us here. So, didn't test for that, which is beyond me, but it was never studied, and it's, in my opinion, inappropriate to assign the capability to the vaccines that it reduces transmission if you didn't even study it. There's no evidence that they reduce the spread of transmission at all because there was never a clinical end trial point for it.
And that's wild.
But
And they did it in 1 year.
and they did it in 1 year.
And they did it in 1 year.
So not that the entire vaccine passport is about COVID in the first place, because it's about a social credit system being implemented,
Yeah.
but this is just one out of a billion reasons why the vaccine passport is just complete and utter bullshit. Next red flag, testing failures because of subjective testing. Okay?
Next one.
Okay. Introduced a high level of subjectivity by leaving it up to the discretion of the investigators whether or not to test participants for COVID-19. Meaning that they completely missed the asymptomatic infections. They didn't even test for it. The lack of systemic, objective approach to testing makes the entire results of the trial unreliable. All trial participants should have been regularly tested consistently throughout.
Yeah.
How else are you going to test for asymptomatic infections other than models?
Right.
Which is that-
Tier 5 evidence,
Yeah.
as we know.
Right.
well, and that makes me think of that's a lot of the reason why they have certain expectations about the climate too. It's because since the 30s they've been closing down weather stations, and instead of just removing that data, they use models to predict the data that would have came out of that place. And so if you base all of your models on CO2 rising, temperatures are all going to rise everywhere then,
Sure.
too.
Right.
So
Well, they also been preaching since like the 50s that
Yeah.
we have 10 more years till all the
Oh,
ice is
yeah.
melted.
We've gone through
well,
that.
now
at
they
least 4
they
times.
flipped.
Yeah, at
They
least.
flipped. It was like 70s to 90s. It was like we're gonna go into another ice age.
Yeah.
And now it's like we're gonna go and Earth's
The
gonna
polar
become an
caps are
oven.
melting, and we're gonna flood the entire thing.
Isn't there like basic science where if you put ice and water, that when it melts, it doesn't rise?
I'm not sure.
I haven't
to be
heard
honest.
that one, but just
No,
objectively
like-
speaking, you would think that adding a quantity of water to more water would rise it.
But it's a
Unless
different
the
physical
water's
state.
No,
physically
I'm saying,
in the
yeah,
water
so-
to begin with
yeah,
to measure it.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like a glass of water, you put ice in there, it rises. But when the ice melts,
So measuring it from when you first drop the ice in compared to when the ice is entirely melted.
Yes.
it won't go up.
Yeah, it
It's
should
a
be the
volume
same.
issue, right?
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
There's no
yeah.
additional volume.
Isn't that
Exactly.
basic that we learned that in literally
Well, I mean,
Grade school?
I was ADD as hell and didn't pay attention in school, but even my basic understanding of the premise tells me that is correct.
Right.
I mean, we'll just do it.
Yeah, go get some.
Yeah, we could just do that.
Get some
So
water.
theoretically speaking, there's no water being added to Earth.
There's no water.
That's not already
Yeah.
here.
Exactly.
Right?
It's already here.
Right.
Same with the whole
Why is this
carbon.
gonna?
The same, like you got underwater springs under the surface of the earth.
Yeah.
You take water out, what's going to happen? Springs are going to rise, or it's
Yeah.
going to keep pumping water into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to find its balance and stay there. But that's a complete.
That's a
That's a
different
different route.
route.
That's,
Completely different route.
that's podcast number 3. So we'll jump back into this. We're almost through it, half of it. So we'll move along and knock this out real quick. So when Pfizer was doing their test, like I said, they didn't bother testing for asymptomatic infections, which is a huge misstep. But not only that, they are missing a lot of data that they lost or didn't get followed up with or suspected but unconfirmed. So Pfizer did not test 3,410 suspected case who were symptomatic with COVID-19 because the discretion of the testing was left up to the investigator. So you had 3,400 people who were symptomatic and didn't get tested.
So
That
we
doesn't
wouldn't
make
know.
any sense.
Didn't make any sense at all.
Wow.
That includes 1,594 patients in the vaccinated group and 1,800 in the placebo group. Pfizer lost contact with 80 people throughout the trial in the vaccinated group and 86 in the placebo, which means they were unable to confirm whether 186 patients got sick or not.
Lost contact.
Yeah, the lost contact.
That's
Yeah.
They were killed.
Yeah.
What happened?
Interesting
You know?
statement, man.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, the fact that the number of subjects Pfizer lost contact with and the number of subjects symptomatic but never got tested are significantly higher than the clinical trial endpoint numbers means the entire clinical trial is speculative and unreliable.
Yeah.
How many more red flags we
crazy,
need
man.
already, you know?
Yeah.
So not only that, let's keep it going. 12 to 15-year-olds.
Before we're going to take a break real quick.
All right.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, cool. We'll be right back.
Bump, up.
We're back.
All right.
Hey, we're back.
Oh, I thought about where we're going. Before I move on to the next trial, I want to jump back just a little bit because we talked about how we should be testing for all-cause mortality, right? As the ultimate end game to see if these are doing more harm than good. There's an interesting study or stats just released by the CDC and census.gov, as you'll see right here. The little red dash line here, you see, is our average all-cause mortality. The blue is this year's all-cause mortality so far. As you
Holy
can
shit.
see, it is up approximately 40% from last year. All-cause mortality, not including COVID-19. These
Not
are other
including.
issues people are dying from.
Holy cow.
40% increase.
Well, and that I was saying this at the beginning of it. It's like you're gonna have deaths from suicides and everything else,
Yeah,
like
dude.
gonna go up.
Suicide,
That's a great. I'm
drugs.
glad you brought that up.
Now I can't go to.
Dude, more people have died. Young people have died of drug overdoses than COVID.
You know, that's actually
It's
right what
awesome.
this is about. All-cause mortality age 13 to 18. Respiratory disease and disease deaths. 2020, 312. Okay? Just for comparison.
Are these in thousands or just 300?
I guess I actually cut off. I didn't print
Yeah,
out
you were
that
probably in
info.
the thousands if
Yeah.
I had to guess.
Yeah, but in the thousands, correct. So actually, well, that's the thing is children don't die that much from that in that young age. You know
That's
what I
what
mean?
I almost
pretty
don't
sure
think
it's
it is.
not
that's a
thousands.
lot.
Yeah, I have it.
Isn't
Let me
that a
find it
decent
real
amount?
quick.
Like 312,000?
No,
just-
that would be a lot.
That
but
would be a
no.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
312,000
not
is a
in
lot.
thousand. It's not in
It's
thousands.
base numbers?
Yeah, base numbers. So this
Okay.
is respiratory diseases including 2020. Okay?
Okay.
Including 2020 or including COVID. Sorry. So 312 in 2020.
Which
For
COVID is
COVID.
mainly respiratory.
Yeah, well, that's
Respiratory.
the thing. It's in COVID and other ones. But then you look at the drug and alcohol-induced deaths for the age 13 to 18, it's at 1,006.
3 times as high.
3 times as high, especially on average. You're running anywhere from 600 to 420 on average for drug and alcohol deaths for 13 to 18-year-olds per year. And you've essentially doubled that. But yet your COVID or your respiratory deaths in that age range are not out of skew compared to the rest of the years.
Dude, that's sick.
Yeah.
3 times more deaths in 13 to 18
from drug and alcohol alone. That's not including, how much the drastic spike in suicides and everything else.
Or glancing over the fact that alcohol is involved, and we're talking about 13 to 18-year-old kids that can't even legally buy it.
I know, that's what I'm thinking.
Getting it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Somehow. Crazy.
So
I'm speechless.
Yeah. This one, the all-cause mortality one that threw me, it was like to see it in a chart to know that we're up 40% from last year on all-cause mortality. And let's think, in the last 2 years, what have we done drastically different than ever before? What could it be? Yeah. I don't know. So,
we didn't lock people in their houses.
Yep, and give them reward or donut rewards for getting a vaccine when obesity is a direct correlation for your death rate.
Yeah, the highest.
Weird.
If I'm not mistaken.
Weird. 85% people were obese.
Yeah.
That's why I'm all for vax-maxing. Only vax-maxing. You take them all at the same time. Take numerous doses. Make sure you are protected.
Yes,
protected.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's how the Hulk got started. All them gamma rays.
You're right.
Yeah. But I just had to bring that up before I lost track of it since it tied into everything.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's nuts.
Yeah. And then, but that's, we're talking.
Well, it's not even like, I get it. Don't get me wrong. We're laughing at this, but like if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying.
Yeah.
Sure.
100%.
Absolutely.
I'm way past the tears,
Yeah. Like we're so far into the clown world that it's like you can't even cry about it anymore.
Right.
It's not even like that surprising. Like it's like, oh yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. These drastic facts
like it's not like, whoa, really?
aren't
Like
even surprising anymore.
Yeah. I knew it was coming, but like to see it actually graphed out, to see 40%.
See, this is one of those things where I was hoping I was wrong.
Yeah, you 100%. Pray and hope that you're wrong.
Yeah,
but you're not.
That's the worst thing about it.
Yeah. And it's not like I bring this shit up. It's like I have no personal motivation for bringing this shit up on Instagram all the time other than the fact of like, me and my dad and my wife are the only ones in my family who do not take this. Like I brought this up before they took it in an effort for them not to take it. I don't want my entire family to die. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I do this because I'm trying to do my part to like expose the scam that are essentially killing people here.
Right.
To make money.
A shit ton of money.
Trillions.
A lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but the problem is like once you start, the biggest problem I have is once you start going after the kids, which is what we're going to talk about next.
See, that's like, I have a problem with going after kids because that to me is a crime against humanity.
If it wasn't already.
Right.
Because it's like you're going after a populace that has no recollection of the world prior to all of this bullshit happening. Right. It's like I asked my dad, I said, what's it like living in a high interest world? Because I honestly am like, I have no recollection of a world that has high interest rates. And I know that's a little off topic, but it's the same idea. It's like my dad lived through the 70s, so he saw the interest rates go all the way up to 50%, whatever.
That's fucking crazy, man.
I know. And that's like, I was just asking because I'm like, what was that like? Do I have to prepare for it? Like, I don't know. Like,
right.
And he was just like, well, the main thing is gas. He says, I remember you'd wait in certain areas, you'd be waiting for a long time to get gas.
Oh my God.
And can you imagine that nowadays? Like, can you imagine a gas shortage? Well, I mean, with the pipeline ending, it's not.
I feel like we're not too far off.
Right.
Yeah. But the kids
that's aside from the point. Yeah, but like the kids are where that's why I have a main problem with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when they did this adolescent trial, which is age 12 to 15, we're talking about the kids across the entire globe
Well,
potentially getting this.
Think about what you just said right there. That, first of all, kids do not have the ability to give consent.
Nope.
Only their parents.
Correct.
So you're talking about parents that willingly let their kids be guinea pigs.
For a vaccine.
12 to 13. Is it 12 or
12
13?
to 15.
12 to 15.
And that's the one study. You know they're doing other ones that now it's like 6 months to 5 or whatever that are in the phase of trials right now.
And granted, we're in sort of a bubble in our community.
Yes, I feel blessed for that fact.
Which, yeah, I completely agree. We're in a bubble. We have to realize that.
Yes, we are.
And so, like, aren't confronted by a lot of these. Like, you don't see a lot of parents in our community being like, oh, I'm going to let my kid get researched on a vaccine, whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
You wouldn't hope so anyways.
Yeah, that's just for perspective.
Yeah. But so you're doing this test on the kids, and this is about a test that they're seeing if it's safe and effective to do for essentially the entire population of 12 to 15-year-olds is what they're targeting.
Right.
So on that, you do that, but on their trial, we're talking like less than 2,000 participants in the trial.
Do you have the data that shows the amount of kids in that age range in the world that they're trying to portray? Like 2,000 people to have
2,000 to billion.
Billions.
I don't even know how many kids there are, but I guarantee you
would be
it's
absurd.
Let me look that up.
I would think we're in the 100 million range.
At least. Because you're talking, I mean,
just between America and Canada, I would think you'd be.
Okay, this is on whatever website this is.
1.9 billion.
They're saying 1.9 billion
is below 15 years old.
So even that's 35% of the world population below the age of 15.
27%.
Okay. Jesus. But we're going to test 2,000 kids.
Yeah, 2,000.
Make our
assumption about that.
Which just seems extremely underpowered, right? So that's red flag number 30,000. So you got 1,005 kids in the inoculated group, and you have 978 in the placebo group.
Key word that you just used that I'm guessing you read that.
What?
You just said inoculated.
I didn't. It actually says vaccinated, but inoculated. I just see that.
Okay.
Say that all the time. Yeah. So there, 1,005 are vaccinated, 978 are placebo, 0 tested positive for COVID out of the vaccinated, and 18 tested positive for COVID-19.
Can you?
Sorry, go ahead.
That is. We're talking about, like you said earlier, 2,000 people. 2,000 kids. There are 1.9 billion kids on Earth.
Yep.
We're talking about testing
Now,
What is that?
Granted,
what is
that?
that? What is 2%? What is 2,000?
This test is for 12 to 15-year-olds specifically.
No, yeah,
so
I get that.
you can't do less than 12 in the population.
So let's be rational with this. If there's 1.9 billion kids in the world, that means under 18. We'll be conservative on it. We'll say a third of those people are 12 to 18.
Yeah, I say that's
fair,
or at least within the ballpark for the conversation.
Sure,
you know.
I'm going to do that. 2,000 divided by. Well, what's 1.9 billion? Oh my God, so much zeros.
I couldn't.
So many zeros, dude.
So we're gonna What are we saying? That it's like a third
divided
of that
by 3.
Yeah. So that's 633 million.
Yeah.
But let's test 2,000.
2,000 kids.
And that's just where? Was that in the world? It was 1.9
in the world.
Okay.
So 633 million.
Take 2,000 divided by that number.
I know. That's a bad number.
It's not going to be great. It's probably going to give you exponent to that, I would imagine. Because it'll be...
Wait a second. I didn't do that right.
Something's wrong there.
Let me clear.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
2,000 divided by 633 million.
Yep.
Jesus Christ, that's so many zeros.
Yep. It gives you an exponent. It's so small.
So that's 0.00003% of the kids. So we're talking about so that's tenths, hundreds,
So sad.
thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. That's 5. 10 millionths. So we're talking a 10 millionth of the population they're testing on.
To make a decision for the entire population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what it really, like,
That's what it
people
is.
might say, like, oh, well, this is just America or whatever. It's like, no, this stuff is being shipped across the world.
Well, hell, the DOT just issued a $2 trillion contract for Pfizer for another 300 million doses for low income and impoverished countries.
See, and that's the thing I see it happening is that this was in the Davos agenda. They were talking about we need to help smaller countries or whatever because they have an unfair
disadvantage.
Yeah, whatever.
But yet they're the same people who are saying, F you, keep your vaccines. We're taking ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine.
Well, no, and like the thing about
South
it is
Africa.
the Davos is like, oh, well, you're just planning on their economy crashing, and the only way they can pay off all their debt is to come to you to get the loan to pay off their debt with. And then you're like,
Insert Rothschild quote brought up at the beginning of it.
Exactly. 100%.
Yep.
Jeez.
So not only is that an extremely small amount of people,
Yep.
and now granted there was 0 test positive for
10 millionth. I want to make that point.
I can't stress it enough.
A 10 millionth of the children's population of the world was tested.
Yep. And now 0 tested positive for the vaccinated group in 18. So initially you're like, oh, that's great news for Pfizer, right? They claimed they were great results. But since adolescents are at statistically almost 0% for death from COVID in the first place and very low risk for severe illness, vaccination is of little benefit to them because it doesn't prevent transmission. They can still transmit it.
Right.
And that was like the whole argument of it all.
Yeah, it's so little benefit because it only prevents a very real risk of adverse events, which we know as of Pfizer's trial data was not designed to find. But like out of this 1,005 people that you got inoculated, you have one very serious vaccine side effect. One in particular, and her name was Maddie DeGare. And the reason why she's important is she was vaccinated, right? And this goes into another, in my opinion, habitual misstep, intentional misstep on classifying what they deem an adverse side effect. Okay?
I'm glad you gave the name too, because
Oh, look it up. This is and I'm gonna tell you the story right now about it. And
well,
this
I
is
mean
messed
that's
up.
like when you can get lost in the numbers
Oh, absolutely.
until
It's
you
very
realize like their names of every single person that died or was severely affected.
Yep. So this is a real person, a real girl, 12 years old. Vaccinated in the trial group. So the reason why she's important, 12-year-old, but she had a serious reaction to her second dose and was hospitalized within 24 hours. She developed gastroparesis, nausea, vomiting, erratic blood pressure, memory loss, brain fog, headaches, dizziness, fainting, seizures, verbal and motor tics, menstrual cycle changes, lost feeling from the waist down, lost bowel and bladder control, and she had to have a feeding tube inserted because she lost her ability to eat. She's been hospitalized many times, and for the past 10 months, she has been wheelchair bound and fed via a tube. In the FDA report, and this is where it's messed up, they classified her injury as functional abdominal pain. That's what it was listed under. Functional abdominal pain. Not only is this unconscionable, but it opens up to the possibility that other events have been suppressed or misrepresented because obviously this one very clearly was.
Yeah.
Functional abdominal pain. Wheelchair bound on a feeding tube.
functional.
But
How the hell?
safe and effective though, dude.
How the hell do you even give it that name?
Crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like, it makes me think of Benjamin Franklin saying, I'd rather have 100 guilty persons run free rather than one innocent person be, I don't know how he says it. You guys understand what the, I want to read the quote exactly.
I have not heard this before.
I have not heard this either.
I see it.
That it is better 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent person should suffer. Is a maxim that has been long and generally approved.
Yeah.
And that's like the whole deal with the vaccines. I think that needs carryover.
Yeah.
Like the same with this was talking. If I remember right, this is talking about our criminal or legal system.
Justice system. Yeah.
I think that carries over. I think it should at least. That's just my opinion on it. But same deal is like right when you give them a name, like
It's a real person.
it's a real person.
Somebody's kid. There's a 12-year-old
A
little girl.
12-year-old kid takes the vaccine, and like, don't get me wrong, like
I
She might be
I
a-
can't even stand to see my 2.5 month like
Cry.
cry.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and like this, I mean, is like, don't get me wrong, like this is it might be an edge case or whatever. It's still a person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's fine. I understand. Like you do these trials so you weed this stuff out.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is they suppressed the information.
Yeah, and that's where
That's
I
the
have,
problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
And
if you were
suppressed /
out front,
misrepresented.
if you were out front with this and like made it your point, like, hey, listen, we had a few people that really had some adverse reactions and like really fucked up their quality of life.
Sure.
People would be fine with it. And this goes back to like the Getter thing. Is like if he would have just said, hey, listen, we don't want any white nationalists on our program.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone would have been completely fine.
Sure.
But no
It's like-
transparency.
No, yeah, and that's where the problem comes. Is when you're telling things that are incorrect.
Yeah.
And knowingly telling things that are incorrect.
In a bid to influence others.
Yes, exactly. Coerce.
Coercion. Nuremberg trial number one.
And when people call you out, you still are like, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yep.
and that's why, like, I'm all for this shit, just because it's like enough being silent.
Yeah.
That's my deal on it all. Is there's no reason to be silent anymore
Yeah.
because that's where the problems come from.
Yeah.
It's when you have the silent majority staying silent.
Absolutely.
You know, and people, I definitely get my fair share of conspiracy theorist accusations against myself.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna
We
say,
all do.
My track record is as time passes and information comes out, I'm going from quite a negative ratio to quite a positive ratio pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I will say, I can take my tinfoil hat off. You can't take an mRNA vaccine out of your bloodstream.
Yeah.
So
And
I
that's
at least like
like-
that going for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that goes to the. I'm curious about this because I'm hit or miss. Because you have these companies coming out and saying like, oh, regardless of the Supreme Court dealing, we're still mandating
Carhartt.
vaccines. Yeah, like Carhartt.
Yeah.
I am on because, and this is hard for me just because I'm so libertarian. It's like a private business should be allowed to do what a private business does. But now I'm like faced with the predicament that's like, is a private business allowed to do something that affects you your entire life? Because
And what you put in your body.
no, that's what I mean. Is like you're putting something in that could affect you your entire life. Is like if I go my side all the way, it's like, well, if that's what you're doing, then personally, I feel like you should be compensated for the rest of your life. Then,
But they're not liable anymore.
yeah, exactly.
You know, that's the other kicker.
And that's why I say if you work for a company and you're extremely against the vaccine shit and they enact that stuff, as much as I know it will probably be the worst ever,
Well,
or it'll be hard, but you gotta leave.
What, yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, what's the social contract? They force you to take this vaccine. What makes them say, "Oh, you're fired tomorrow"?
Yeah,
Right.
What's the social contract there?
and that's what
Open
that's why I
yourself up to a
said
big old lawsuit down the
Yeah.
road.
it's hard for me to say that because I understand that people can't just like quit their jobs because they might have a family to feed or whatever.
Sure.
But like that's what they're holding over your head.
Yeah, that's coercion.
Yeah,
That's Back
exactly.
to Nuremberg Code number 1 again.
Oh, you can't feed your family.
I got $1
Yeah,
for
exactly.
All you gotta do is
got
take
you
the
a dollar.
vaccine.
Yeah.
Oh, we gotta be quicker than that.
And I want to make a point that it's like you guys might be different, but me personally, I'm not against vaccines. I'm not against that
I'm
at
not
all.
against vaccine. I just gave my 2-month-old vaccines.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like we're getting lumped into the category. It's like, oh, you're against COVID, you're an anti-vaxxer. And it's like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Like,
You know, an anti-vaxxer is a very loose term thrown around nowadays because technically they changed the definition to where if you're against the narrative of COVID-19, you're an anti-vaxxer.
yeah, exactly.
So that made a whole bunch of people suddenly become anti-vaxxers by definition. But
well, and
at
that's
that
how
point, it's
that's
like
how
when you
Marxists work.
Yeah. Well, when you have this level of fraud,
They
it
changed
makes
the
me.
words.
It's like if you're gonna
100%.
if you're gonna commit massive amounts of fraud on this, what else have you committed massive amounts of fraud on and haven't been caught on?
Right.
As because obviously Pfizer's a habitual offender.
Yeah.
Here.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's be honest. If they're like really bad at hiding evidence right here, they probably haven't. I mean, like,
Well,
Somebody
they're
just
dumb.
needs to find
the
it.
key word is that they're.
Yeah.
I don't think they're not trying to hide it.
we're
They're
just dumb
trying.
enough
They're
to
just trying. Exactly. We're just dumb enough to not look
not
at
look,
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to not question.
Yeah.
Right.
And that goes back to the mass formation psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
And when people actually see it right in front of them, they're like, "Oh, that's wrong."
Yeah.
Instantly dismiss.
Right.
Horse tranquilizer or horse
Yeah.
dewormer.
Yeah.
Horse
Horse
dewormer. Horse dewormer.
Like it's
Dude, that stuff. That's all. Oh my
so
god.
so they don't even have to lie. They can just show it in front of you, but yet everyone has told them this over and over and over again that they won't even believe it.
Right.
The same thing with their biologist saying, like, it's right in front of your face. It's right there.
Well, there's an old
Oh,
quote by a Russian guy, KBG agent. I can't remember his name.
The KBG wait for nobody.
Well,
We've asked the questions.
Is it Yuri Bezmenov?
It might have been. Well, he said that something along the lines of, if you blast basically constant propaganda,
Ideological subversion.
yeah, in 24/7, they'll become so attached to that reality that you can show them certifiably proof that you've been lied to, and they'll still reject it.
Is it this guy you're
Well, what was there? There's a
Yes,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
guy.
Yep. He was an
KGB.
ex KGB
Yep.
defector.
That's the guy.
Oh yeah, he has a lot of good speeches about how the Soviet Union really got intertwined in our collegiate system.
Yeah, right? Wild.
That's the worst part. I see, like, that's the stuff that pisses me off, is that I hate walking on eggshells. I absolutely hate it. I don't know if it's anybody else, but I can't stand that. And that's what's happening.
Right.
It's like all of this shit that it's like tattletelling on your neighbor or whatever. It's like it's just creating an environment where everyone must walk on eggshells.
Yeah.
I'd-
Extremely similar comparisons as much as you
I
bring it
don't-
up to Nazi Germany, the Jewish
Yeah.
yellow star. Are you hiding Jews under your floor?
Yeah.
I don't walk on eggshells anymore when I'm I just
Make up the
I
mental
say what I
decision not to.
Like, there's got to be lines crossed. I'm gonna just say what I'd say, and if
Well,
you
I
don't
think-
like it, well, okay.
I think that's
I finally learned what it means that the minority is always right. Especially now, like the majority of the people like push vaccine, like the minority is always right. You should always listen to the dissent. The dissent usually has a pretty
well,
good.
just think about that. It's like socialism on a small scale will work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been proven on a small scale. It works. Same with democracy. Democracy works on a small scale.
Yeah.
It does not work on a large scale. Because what happens when you have a large scale democracy is you have a tyranny of the majority then. And that's what's kind of happening
Yeah,
right now.
and
when you have
because this system is actually it's a democratic republic. It's
Or- yeah, I mean,
republic.
think about it. Every time, well, I mean, they probably don't have to say it anymore, but I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
Yeah.
For which it stands.
I remember having to tell one of my history teachers in that, like, I said, we're not a democracy. He's like, yeah, we are. And it's like,
Bro, it's literally in the Pledge of Allegiance.
yeah, we aren't. And like the whole point that we're not is that so you don't have
majority.
abrupt decisions like these being made.
Right.
I mean, you have Stephen Colbert coming out and asking Elizabeth Warren, like, oh, we should abolish the Senate.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, so you're
Did he
just...
really say that?
Yeah, he did.
just like
He asked Elizabeth Warren, like, oh, why don't we just get rid of the Senate? It seems undemocratic because it's 100 people, two for
Right.
each state. Like, oh, that's not democratic. Doesn't even talk about that we have a House of Representatives that checks the Senate.
Right.
He just says that it's not democratic. And that's where we.
Oh boy.
I know.
Oh,
that's
boy.
a whole
And you
different
get the
table.
people see that and regurgitate it like they know it like the back of their hand.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like very parroted right now.
Well, I mean, obviously, a history teacher said it. Like, it's in the books. Like, people are constantly pounding in. That's democracy.
Yeah, they don't tell you that.
No,
Well, and here's the other thing.
It's not a democracy.
This just made me think of it.
Sorry,
is
bud.
This misrepresentation of data, people might think like, oh, it's not that big of a deal or whatever. Think back to like history class or whatever, and you ask like, how many people did Stalin the Butcher kill? It's a range. No one has an exact number. No one has an exact number for how many Jews killed by Hitler. No one has an exact number of people killed by Mao or Pol Pot or whatever. Every single
person committing genocide.
and it's like that's what happens when you misinterpret data. That's what happens, or when you have data skewed or whatever.
The government has killed more people than anything in this world. The government.
Yeah,
People killing people is the most.
and that's not to the point that it's like, oh, we don't need any government. It's like we need some.
Yeah.
I'm not a full on anarchist. That's like, oh, we can't. Everyone, we just need to lead by tribal leaders.
I
Everyone
think
have
what
their
the
own-
main thing we need is we need less federal government.
Yes.
more
Less
state government.
State.
Yeah.
If you don't, if you don't like the state, guess what?
Move.
Move to a
That's
different
right.
state that has
Exactly.
better freedom.
That's right.
And that's pretty much happening right now.
Yeah, you see, that's
Like
why
California
you see
and New York are, dude. Didn't Texas and Florida like gain like one or two house seats because of how many people actually moved there?
Did that? Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me because U-Haul just named Gavin Newsom like employee of the year for something because of how many people
moved out of California.
Yeah, just like Indiana named Whitmer, Indiana's business person of the year was Whitmer because she kept her state locked down, so everybody just drove down to Indiana, did their shit, and then went back.
Went back up.
So Indiana named Michigan's governor
the other
business of the year.
California, since its inception, 1850 was when it became a state. Population in California has been increasing every single year since that. It doesn't anymore.
Not since 2020.
No.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think that's a good sign as long as you don't.
As long as they don't do the same thing that they did in California.
And that's what worries me is that
don't bring those ideologies elsewhere.
Humans have a
short-term memory.
No, not just short-term memory. They have a leaning towards being locusts, meaning like they wipe out an area, move to another area,
plague.
Yeah, and keep moving, and then until there's nothing left.
Right.
And, well, that's what I don't want to happen is that, and that goes back to like, I'm not against climate change or whatever. I'm for environmentalism.
Yeah.
I'm not for climate change and shit. Like, I think that you shouldn't litter. I think you should recycle. I think you should do your part in like
try not to just trash the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we should still take care of the place that we live.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're on a whole different.
Yeah. Sorry.
All
back
good.
to podcast number
the
6.
KGB wasteful note about it. You gotta say that.
We'll jump back in. We're almost through the data here, but we're gonna finish up the test that they did on the 5 to 11-year-olds now. So, the Pfizer data itself is using predictive modeling to acknowledge that the vaccinations will cause myocarditis. They're using modeling, which is low form of scientific evidence. Predictive, and they're using it in a predictive manner that they know it will cause myocarditis.
Well, and here's the key point why I want to say predictive is that it's very easy to manipulate a predicted model when you only have a span of 2,000 people or whatever.
Right.
That's extremely easy. All you had to do is sway like a few bodies or change the data on a few bodies to significantly change the whole model itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just wild that to do that, to just blatantly just list it knowing that it's going to cause myocarditis. But the problem is they optimistically claim that there will be 0 deaths from myocarditis. This is obviously very much speculation on their part, using the low-level evidence of a predictive model in the first place. But even if it were true, there's no justification to give children myocarditis, causing harm to children. This goes back to the, what is it, page number 2? What's the thing? First, do no harm.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
no
And here
harm.
we are. That first do no harm should apply here. And because when we talk about myocarditis, as they optimistically claim, there will be no deaths from it. Do you guys know what myocarditis is?
Yeah, inflammation of the heart.
Yep.
Yeah, so it damages the heart and is not reversible. It's an inflammatory I cannot talk today. Inflammatory process of the heart muscles. Severe myocarditis weakens your heart so that the rest of your body doesn't get enough blood. Clots can form in your heart, leading to a stroke and a heart attack. You know what the mortality rate for myocarditis is? Up to 20% at 6.5 years.
One
That's
in 5.
unequivocally an unacceptable risk for kids that are healthy in the first place.
I think there's.
And that's a very lenient rate.
I think a lot of that has.
Have you seen the soccer players?
Yeah.
It's just
We're up like
dropping,
300% in soccer players' deaths.
That's the weirdest part is that obesity was a large problem, a large factor in adding to all of this data. And
yeah.
you're starting to see it affect people that are not. Like you just said,
Complete
the
opposite
soccer.
of that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You're talking about people that are in the top shape.
Best shape of their lives, the best athletes in the world.
So-
Like, you ever seen a soccer player? Like, don't get me wrong, like,
Those
I'm
fuckers run
athletic, whatever,
miles.
but my God, they soccer players, I can't dribble a ball, run full sprint.
Just
No.
like on an average game alone, they run like 4 to 6 miles.
Yeah.
And that's not
That's
even
probably
practice.
conservative.
Yeah, or like conditioning, that they
Right.
go through, the training they go to. So I know this is very speculative, but after seeing all the cardiovascular issues coming out with, post-vaccination, I mean, and these are the people who are using their bodies at the hardest rate possible. You could have millions of people with low-level cardiovascular damage and not even know it, and it's not going to show up for 10 years, and you got, a quarter of your population with cardiovascular disease now. It's just nuts. So 20%, knowing that 20% are going to die within 6.5 years, and knowing that the death rate for 5 to 11-year-olds is 0.01% in the first place, just is the
Makes no
reward
sense.
does not outweigh
Risk
the risk.
does not, yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, and it 100% abandons the first do no harm clause in the first place
Well,
because,
and that's like not even fortune favors the bold. That's like,
yeah, they've abandoned
Stupidity.
that.
Yeah,
They straight abandoned
100%.
that model, which is like their main thing that they operate off of. They abandoned it. So you got medical interventions that are supposed to be proven safe that are rolled out into a population, yet you got one of the 18 members of the FDA advisory panel who voted to approve children actually said the opposite and suggested that a population level rollout was an appropriate way to test for adverse events.
What?
Yeah, they said that in the the meeting. Like, you can go on YouTube and pull up the entire 8-hour meeting right now. And if you got 8 hours to
Yeah.
fucking watch it,
Yeah.
but it's like 4 hours and 23 minutes into it or something like that. They literally said the only way we'll know is to roll it out and find out.
that doesn't seem
First,
like a.
do no harm.
Yep, gone. That was lit on fire in a bag full of dog shit on somebody's front doorstep. It's gone, stomped to bits. It's just
Just try it.
just
roll it out and try
Just
it. Find out what happens.
Yeah, let's kill all these kids. No problem. Worst case scenario.
Yeah, we have data from 2000.
Right? We got 2,000 kids we tested. Let's see what happens. So, and you brought it up earlier where you have, your direct to consumer advertising all the
Yeah.
time, and it's illegal in other countries.
Yeah,
but
most other places don't even see that.
Yeah.
They think that's outrageous that pharmaceutical companies have.
Advertisement straight to you.
Oh
right?
my God.
And now, granted, that's mostly a USA problem. Not that other countries don't have
Yeah.
it, but you still see them pushing it to people all the time. You got fucking Elmo or what's the
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street out there, giving pro-vaccination statement, but really it should be today's letter is M for myocarditis, or today's letter is C for coercion. But they're selling it right to these kids, and you got politicians from all levels of the government, you got marketing people, and saying it's safe, yet they don't have the data or the long-term studies to prove that it's safe. In the fact that you also have them admitting that their vaccinations cause myocarditis. Conservatively, they estimate nobody will die. They don't know that, but they know it's going to cause myocarditis, and they're still saying it's safe and effective and giving approval to give it to kids when the risks don't outweigh the rewards. Mm-mm. They were admitted in their report that their long-term immune response, efficacy, and safety and data is limited, and that their studies were not powered to find rare side effects. There's only 1,517 kids got the inoculation in the test. They were not powered to find rare side effects. And if we know rare, is that the same kind of rare that Gabby got?
Yeah.
With her functional abdominal pain?
Well, and it's like
it's the law of informed consent.
Those rare effects will happen in a populace so diverse.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? When you have people from all walks of life in America, you have people working on oil rigs, you have people working on farms, you have people working in tech companies, you have such a large difference in everyone's occupations. They're all going to be subjected to all of these other rare instances. It's like you could be exposed on your work to one of these things that will affect the vaccine's ability or whatever.
A rare side effect.
Exactly.
Right? It just blows my mind. Then you also get the fact that the British Medical Journal, pretty reputable, right? The medical journal posted a whistleblower story on November 2nd, okay? And this was about a company called Ventavia, or it's Ventavia, okay? So this is about this company and one of the research companies that Pfizer hired to conduct their trials.
How do you spell this?
Ventavia. Yeah, get rid of that N, yeah. That's who it is. There it is. First thing, British Medical Journal. Okay. So this company, Pfizer hired to conduct the trials that were bashing to shit in this podcast. All right. Okay. But the whistleblower, the regional director, who actually reported her company to the FDA for falsifying data. Unblinding participants, not following up and testing participants who reported symptoms like we talked about before, mislabeling specimens. Several other of her employees backed up her account. Despite all of this, neither Pfizer nor FDA ever audited or investigated the research company. Pfizer never disclosed the problems in its UEA application, Emergency Use Authorization, and in fact, Pfizer has now hired the same research company to run 4 more COVID-19 clinical trials.
Same company.
Dude, and this is like, I mean, if you Ventavia Research Group.
Paving the way for medicine, man.
Oh, yeah, paving the way right to the grave.
By partnering with our community to ensure the safety and efficacy of new modern medicine, we will all have an impact on eliminating health issues and diseases,
right?
Including those that threaten our lives and the lives of our loved ones.
Eliminating health
very
issues,
hypocritical.
It honestly,
dude, that's like cringy.
The verbiage is.
I know.
It's COVID-19.
It sounds like a lawyer wrote it too. Like, can you imagine me walking up to you on the road and I'm saying, hey, listen, man, I think you should really give to our group. We partner with the community to ensure the safety and efficacy of new modern medicines, and we will have an impact on eliminating health issues and diseases, including those that threaten our lives and the lives of our loved ones. Do you think you would donate to me?
I have one hard pass.
You know, back in the day, maybe, but now all I see is propaganda.
Yeah, dude.
Established by a vision to create research company that would provide exceptional services
to the clinical trials.
Yeah.
Wild.
The clinical.
Isn't there a?
Yeah.
Isn't there a member of Pfizer that is on the board of the NIH?
My bad.
Say that again.
So there's a person of Pfizer, like I think the CEO of Pfizer or something is on the NIH board, the board of the NIH. I thought I saw that somewhere.
It could be.
I have a list. I did notice that Reuters is on, is Pfizer's fact checker.
Reuters,
yeah.
Oh, that maybe that's what it was.
And the CEO or somebody of Reuters sits on which board?
On Pfizer. I got that.
Is the World Economic Forum board as well as Pfizer's.
Okay.
That's the guy that I see. I'm pretty sure this is the CEO or something. This is the guy that I keep seeing on the news.
Listen to that. This is a special partner
this guy
of
used
Pfizer.
to be in the FDA. He used to be the head of the FDA.
He was previously the FDA's Deputy Commissioner for Medical and Scientific Affairs from 2005 to 2007.
As well as the Senior Advisor at FDA, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is on the board of directors of Pfizer. I mean, we could probably go to every single person on here.
If you scroll up just a little bit on that previous one, it's actually ironic. What's that say? He was the commissioner of the U.S. FDA from 17 to 19. Just happened to stop the FDA in 2019.
Hey, I'm going to make a bunch load of money. Hey, I'm going to
great point, Jeff.
Yeah.
That's a great coincidental timeline.
Weird.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong. We have correlation without causation,
Sure,
whatever.
Absolutely.
But there's so many.
Suspicious is all I'm saying.
What is it? It's not Occam's razor, Hanlon's razor. Do not attribute malice that is attributed to stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're past that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Clearly.
there's so many coincidences that it's like, you got
when is it statistically impossible for these coincidences to keep
exactly.
Yep. I feel like
When do we
passed
draw
that
that line?
mathematical
Yeah,
probability point.
I agree.
Yeah. So another problem that I have with this is the fact that you don't find what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
All right. So in this test, they assure us that they're going to monitor the vaccine rollout closely, right? And if there's problems, they will find them. Dang it.
They will get
They will
find them.
find them.
But is that true? You know? Is that true? So we look at the Pfizer documents and let's see. I believe it is this one.
Rollout surveillance.
Yeah, rollout surveillance.
What does that headline say on that?
Pfizer trials did not prove safety; they proved harm, and that's where I was talking about the vaccine, the amount of side effects. So this is you don't find what you don't look for. Okay, so we have two charts here. We got one on the left, one on the right. Okay, the one on the left represents actual surveillance. The one on the right represents passive surveillance. And for those who have pulled up the document when you're actually listening to this and are following along, slide 35. So you have the chart on the left, active surveillance. One on the right represents passive surveillance. There's a dramatic difference between passive and active monitoring of adverse events. Mm-hmm. The first bar on the left represents participants in the Pfizer trial. Boom. Okay. Asked to choose from a list of adverse events they were experiencing during the first 7 days of vaccination. So they were given a list of adverse events to say, this one most closely represents my situation. Okay? Messed up in the first place. 78% of participants reported an adverse event. 78% of participants reported an adverse event. I'm just going to say that again. And 5% reported a severe adverse event. The chart on the right, however, shows how much the signal is lost through our passive surveillance system, like Health Canada, CDC, VAERS, the Europeans, the yellow card system. It's not reason. I personally don't think it's reasonable to believe that a vaccine that elicited adverse effects in 78% of its trial elicited essentially zero in the real-world population rollout as they recorded.
Yeah.
0.0 or 0.29 is what VAERS captured.
Yeah, they're not reporting well.
Yeah. So I have a hard time seeing 78% just magically disappears to 0%.
Yeah.
There's fuckery afoot.
Fuckery afoot.
Yeah. So that's a big problem. What is happening? Clearly there's a signal lost between the two. It's not that the events are just gone, because we know that isn't the case. We're seeing it all over people's social media streams. We see real world people we know who've had problems. Friend took the shot, hasn't had her period since.
That's not
That's
normal.
not good.
That's not normal.
That's totally no. But they're
No,
safe.
no, no, no,
They're
no,
safe
no.
and effective.
Safe and
Yeah,
effective.
safe.
Right.
95%
So
effective.
we're 100%. We're gone,
Efficacy, yes.
and we're not finding them because, quite frankly, we're not looking for them as they claimed we would be.
Or they're just not being reported.
Or they're being suppressed because, as the Harvard study on the VAERS system in America found, that approximately 1 to 10% of adverse events are actually reported.
1 to 10.
1 to 10%. So we assume on the safe side. Let's assume on the safe side, and this is a strong assumption, that 10% is what is being reported. So we're missing, 80% or 90%, instead of 99%.
Yeah.
Right.
Think about the VAERS. What does the most recent VAERS statistics show? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know. After I started
It was like
reading into the VAERS database,
18,000 deaths or something like
Okay,
that.
so let's assume that it is on the 10% side. What is that number times
90%.
90
yeah,
more?
100,000?
A lot?
18,000, 10%. You're talking about
Yeah, if you're
800?
10%. Yeah.
Okay, so let's assume now it's on the low end and at 1%. What's it times 99?
Yeah, that's not great.
so even at if you take 10% of 18,000, it's like 800. You take 1% of that, it's like 100, and then times that by whatever.
Yeah.
You're still talking like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So on December 10th of 2020, VAERS reported 20,244 deaths.
In that, yeah.
106 hospitalizations, 106,000 hospitalizations, 106,000 urgent care visits, 151,000 doctor office visits, 8,500 anaphylaxis, 12,000 Bell's palsy, 3,297 miscarriages, 10,000 heart attacks, 19,000 myocarditis/Picarditis, 33,000 permanently disabled.
How many?
33,675
Oh my God.
permanently disabled.
Reported to VAERS as adverse reactions to taking
And so we're
the shot.
somewhere, we believe somewhere between 1 and 10% accuracy. And based on everything else I see, quite frankly, I got to believe we're on the 1%
You're
side.
Yeah,
probably on the
for
lower end
sure.
of that scale, absolutely.
So keep in mind, 33,000 permanently disabled versus the 20,000 deaths. Permanently disabled. Are you fucking kidding me?
I'd rather die than be permanently disabled.
Yeah, 4,800 cases of I can't even pronounce that. I'm just gonna move on. low pallet count. 22,953 life-threatening adverse events. 35,000 severe allergic reaction. 11,000 cases of shingles. Add those all together.
That's
Oh,
Times it by
got
99.
Times that
times it by
by 99. You gotta remember that part.
We're at millions and millions and millions.
Oh, boy. Well,
remember when they said that the virus is going to kill hundreds of millions of
Yep.
people, and then
Cut to it's a vaccine.
Virus isn't the problem.
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. So
oh, there was something posted. It was like the age range, and it was like to surviving rate is like 99.97, 99.87, 99.7, and then it was like 70 and above was like still 95% chance of surviving.
Yeah.
Like that's still a pretty good chance.
Absolutely.
That's
It's way better than the Black Plague or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
heck yeah.
yeah. So you have all that adverse events. You have a ton of rising heart issues. You're seeing it all over the place, especially soccer, like we talked about before. So since we're using the Canadian data, we're going to stick with the Canadian data. Ontario Public Health obviously knows this. They published a report on it, but they seem inconsistent in their concerns. On September 29th, 2021, Ontario Public Health recommended young men 18 to 24 not take the Moderna shot. Why? Because 1 in 5,000 risk of myocarditis. They suggest Pfizer shot instead, which has a 1 in 28,000 risk of myocarditis. So you still have the risk, it's just less.
Right.
But as recently as May 8th, 2021, Ontario had stopped AstraZeneca shot because of a 1 in 60,000 risk of clotting side effects, which was considered too high.
But 28,000 is fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and
So
also the
Moderna.
Pfizer one, it's a little lower than
1 in.
Oh, and that's okay too.
Yeah, that's absolutely okay.
So 1 in 60,000 is too much, but 1 in 28,000 is that's
Well,
cool.
just to put this
That's
into
cool.
perspective, the chance of getting struck by lightning is 1 in 500,000.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody that's been struck by lightning.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a
well, I mean,
person
that's what I'm putting into perspective. Like one in.
I've also never met a guy that got hit by a car until I met Stully.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah, but just to
survived too.
think about that: 1 in 500,000 to get struck by lightning versus 1 in 28,000.
Yeah. So obviously
You're talking about like
priorities are way
almost
off.
100 times. Like,
more likely to experience that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
So yeah. So 1 in 60,000 is too high, but 1 in 28 isn't. So yeah.
Well, you got to remember Pfizer's even less.
That's
so.
not normal. So no, actually,
That
that's
was-
what they're
that was
saying.
Moderna, right?
No,
Or was that Pfizer?
Moderna is 1 in 5,000. So
Moderna.
1 in 5,000.
yeah.
1 in
Yeah,
5,000.
Pfizer's 1 in 28. AstraZeneca was 1
What?
in 60. That's based off of the data that we know is also fucking skewed.
You have 100,000
consistent.
times higher
Oh
chance
my
of
gosh.
an adverse effect from this vaccine than being struck by lightning.
Yeah.
100,000
Good
times
odds. Good
more.
odds. Good odds. Checks out. Move along,
10,000.
nothing
Would
to
it be
see here.
10,000? What's 500,000 by?
5,000 to 500,000? Right?
Is that? Hundred times.
100 times. Oh,
Still, you have 100 times
Still,
more
that's
risk of getting
100.
struck
You
by
have
lightning.
100.
too many zeros.
That's a lot of zeros.
Thank God we got you guys here to do the math.
So you have 100 times
I
more
wish I knew what it
likely
is.
to get side effects than
the
struck
shot.
by lightning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Safe and effective. Safe and effective. But that's obviously not normal.
Because like and the reason why I bring that up is because if I'm gonna take something, I would rather have the odds of getting struck by lightning.
Yes.
yeah.
Just because it's exactly what you said. I don't know anybody that has been struck by lightning.
Sure.
Except for
Like,
the one
so-
guy Stolly knows. you know?
Exactly. So it's like 1 in 500,000. Like the fact that we don't know anybody that's been struck by lightning, I'd rather have those odds.
Right.
Yeah,
I'd much rather like
Well, just from a statistical standpoint,
Yeah.
I'd rather have those odds.
Yeah.
you know? But it's obviously not normal. Fucked up. But we see this leading to a lot more deaths in young people. We've seen it. We talked about the soccer issue. At the time of this article, the German news site had 75 known cases of athletes collapsing and even dying in the last 5 months. Now we know that's up more. We're like at 108 last time I checked, which is a 300% increase. The Israeli news site that I followed analyzed the number of sudden deaths on the pitch, referring to football or their football, our soccer, over the past 20 years. The average number of FIFA sudden deaths between 2000 and 2020 was 4.2
4.2 total deaths.
total deaths between a 20-year span.
Okay.
Okay, in 2021, it was 21,
Holy shit.
Jesus.
5 times the normal average.
Jeez, Pete.
Now, so for 20-year period was 4.2 people dying on average. In 2021, it was 21. So a 20-year span, you had 4. In a 1-year span, you had 21.
Well, even like, regardless of the vaccine and everything, that many deaths means that something has like. Even if you don't believe the vaccines are bad or whatever,
Something
has made this stuff go up.
Yeah.
And what's the
Absolutely.
one thing we've done differently?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Oh, give like a couple 100 million people the vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so people if they didn't understand what's kind of going on there, that's that one.
That's the one
Yeah.
thing.
So
Yeah.
much for being rare, though. You know. So that not only is that a problem, Pfizer's data, which is what I was referencing earlier, that first release of public data that they were forced to release, and that I was talking about the 6 pages of adverse events, which I'll pull up for you. This is from this data that I'm about to talk about is from the same pool of information that was released by Pfizer. And I don't know why it got buried for so long, but this is actually released on November 17th of 2021. So obviously it takes a minute to seep through the cracks in the walls of everybody who's getting banned on Twitter and Instagram and social media. They released the first batch of what is supposed to be 329,000 pages of information. I think it was somewhere around 54 pages long.
It was
they released
55.
Yeah, okay.
55 pages.
So we're just scratching the surface here. So.
And if we're getting all of this in 54 pages, imagine.
What's in the other
Imagine,
339,950 pages?
Why did they want to keep it sealed for 50 to 75 years? At that point, the entire population has taken it as died from old age or whatever else.
I don't plan on being here in 55 years.
Nope. I'll be lucky to make another 20.
I can probably last 55.
Yeah, I'll do it. Screw it. I want to do it.
Hey, what do you take one for the team?
Yeah, man.
So, like, they're burying or they're intentionally suppressing this information. One post-marketing report submitted to the FDA where Pfizer tracked real-world adverse events occurring in the first 2.5 months of authorization. That's what they released, the first 2.5 months, okay? There were 1,200 deaths. Over 25,000 nervous system adverse events under safety concerns listed. Pfizer listed anaphylaxis, and one that I've been harping on for a while, vaccine-associated enhancement disease.
What?
Will they say that again?
Vaccine-associated enhanced disease. So this is what you will commonly refer to as ADE. So this is where, and I pulled an article. And I can pass this one along. This is straight from the NIH definition of what vaccine-associated enhanced disease is. Okay, so this is going to be straight off of it. And this is one file I meant to print, but I got it saved in my file folder here. So this is when infections infecting individuals exposed to a pathogen after having received prior vaccination for the same pathogen. So they're getting sick after receiving the vaccination that they've received the vaccination for.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not working. So there's problem number one. But severe disease is documented resulting from infection in individuals primed with non-protective immune responses against the respective virus. Given that these enhanced responses are triggered by failed attempts to control the infecting virus. VAED is typically present with symptoms related to the target organ of the infection pathogen, aka the lungs in this aspect. So what you have here is because it's a leaky vaccine and doesn't stop transmission, they're getting sick after the fact of the same thing they were vaccinated for, which we see all the time. They call them, what do they list them as? Breakthrough cases. Mm-hmm. But because their body immune response isn't working properly due to the vaccine, they are now more susceptible to the same pathogen they were vaccinated for.
Right.
So this is vaccine-induced
illness or
associated enhanced disease because it's enhancing the disease you were vaccinated for now.
Yep.
So now it's just made you more susceptible,
worse off
to not only the variant that you have, but all future variants. And they list it as a safety concern.
Hey,
the document. This should be incriminating evidence.
Yes,
4 of these
for anybody who's called these safe.
Because you got to get the first 2.
Oh, sorry, 2 plus 4.
2 plus 4.
Yeah. Well, this, I guess whatever we're up to in the state.
I got to pee real quick. You guys keep going.
All right, but so that's obviously a major concern, right? That they list that on their data.
Absolutely.
Nobody else finds that concern.
Heck, and even Israel doctors were like, yeah, we probably shouldn't give it this 4th shot because it could actually decrease
it could exacerbate VAED.
Yeah, and the Israel government's like, yeah, no, we're going to mandate.
We're going to go ahead and
push that. We're going to push that
double
down.
Double down.
The 4th one. How about a 5th one?
And the funny thing is that was for Omicron. The 4th one is.
Yep.
And they were already over Omicron.
Yeah.
It already went through Omicron. And they're like, oh, let's go.
More.
Jesus, dude. It's outrageous.
It is.
It just keeps getting pushed.
Especially considering the massive criminal history that Pfizer holds.
Right.
It's one thing if it's a company that has a spotless record, but these are habitual offenders we're talking about.
Criminals, man.
Yeah.
And history repeats itself.
That it does. And the fact that,
especially for morons,
the amount of financial incentive that Pfizer has to make these seem as safe and effective as possible. They made more than $33.5 billion in 2021
Dude,
alone.
even if they go to court or anything like that, they're still going to make billions. I mean, just in 2021, they made $33.5 billion. Yeah. And like the largest criminal fine, they still made
money.
They still made billions of dollars.
Still came out profitable.
Think about that. That was a $3 billion fine. They just made $33 billion. No problem.
Drop
1
in
year.
the bucket, man.
Yep. That's right. They're like, oh, well, $3 billion. Here you go. Get off our
Make
back.
it
We're
go
trying
away.
to kill more people here.
Right.
So they paid out $33.5 billion. Obviously, what is a large company like that's agenda? Would be keep their shareholders happy, right?
Absolutely.
Right? So, and their bottom line is obviously not public health, or else we'd see a lot more transparent and level 1 trial data versus
Evidence.
level 5 evidence trial data. So especially, like we talked about how corrupt they've been, how many fines they've done, and maybe we'll make a 2-part and into Pfizer's criminal history and take a deep dive into that.
Obviously you guys probably know this, but I'm just going to point it out. Like, you know how Bill Gates said that like he wants to reduce the population.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's not going to just reduce the population with the snap of the finger because people are going to be like, no, what the fuck's going on?
Right.
It's going to take some time. So yeah, let's do this and make it look like other things that are happening.
Sure.
More death. Obviously, that
all-cause mortality up 40%.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very interesting.
Interesting. Let's kill people off slowly but surely.
Let's just connect the dots and see what's. The dots are at this point are so close they're almost touching. You just need a tiny little line from one end to B.
Hey, I'm just a normal dude. just looking at some data here.
Just a normal guy. One of the few,
they released.
Yeah, one of the few normal people who's actually read it.
Only 54 pages of the 329,000 pages. So there's some juicy stuff still out to come, boys. There's some juicy stuff. Get ready. In 15 years, we're going to do this again.
If we're all not in the gulag by that point.
Right.
All right. But just, you take into consideration, I'm going to talk a little about, just to scratch the surface, what they've been criminally charged with. Okay? We're talking criminal activities such as lying to get federal approval on a heart valve that fractured and killed hundreds of patients, conducting clinical trials on African children without parents' consent, Nuremberg violation, after which some of the children died. They bribed doctors, suppressed research, manipulated studies, withheld information that their products cause cancer. Zantac. Fraudulent marketing, and many more, ridiculous, egregious crimes. So, this is not out of the realm of possibility because they've habitually done these things. They've paid billions in fines. They paid the largest fine in U.S. history with $3 billion.
Right.
Not to mention the massive amounts of conflict of interest we got going on here. The people who wrote this trial data information, there's conflicts of interest everywhere. The 6-month report, 84% of the authors have conflicts of interest.
86%?
84% have conflicts of interest. And the conflicts of interest that they have, they're A, employed by Pfizer, run clinical trials for Pfizer. There were only 5 authors that didn't have conflicts of interest.
Only
the leading author, the corresponding author, and the last author all have conflicts of interest. The most eye-popping example is the 2 founders of BioNTech are both authors of Pfizer's 6-month report. Let me read that again.
Dude, that's ridiculous.
2 founders of Pfizer are the authors.
32 authors, only 5 of them have no conflicts.
Yeah. Those 2 alone, people, profited $9 billion in stock value from the vaccine rollout.
Much?
$9 billion. Those 2 people alone profited $9 billion.
Guys are rolling. Guys are rolling. They're rolling in some dough. Yeah.
It's messed up.
It's a lot of cash.
That's not conflict of interest at all. Let's just move on.
No.
What happened to those 5 people?
They signed on to it, so whether they were intentional
isn't
or
it that one study where
coerced,
if all of them are doing it, then they're just going to be like
following the herd or mass formation
mass
psychosis.
formation.
Maybe that was.
Perhaps. But again, you can't deny that there's not a conflict of interest right there.
Hey, but I'm just a guy just listening to some data.
That's right. That's right.
Just a guy.
Do you guys remember back in the beginning when they changed the definition of vaccine?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah.
I posted this on my work door for the longest time and
Yeah,
highlighted the
we had a
difference
bunch of
to
them,
it.
yeah.
Yep. So they redefined the definition of vaccine. That's not suspicious. To suit their needs, obviously. But we're talking a vaccine was, before 2020, a product that stimulates a person's immune response system to produce immunity to the specific disease. Keyword being immunity, protecting the person from that disease. On September 2nd, 2021, they changed that definition to a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases. So they left out the part that it provides immunity to a specific disease.
What is preparation?
Basically their version of a concoction that is injected into your body.
Oh no, but I just what's weird like a preparation. What does that mean? Like preparing for what?
I don't have that answer.
Yeah.
Preparation is some fuckery.
Sounds like some preparation H for your butthole, because that's what we're all going through at this point.
That's right, real tight.
You want to do butthole stuff?
No.
Pfizer does.
Not with Pfizer.
Definitely not with Pfizer.
Not with Pfizer.
Yeah, but and it's just like, how do we get to this point? How did we get here? And I have a great video I'd love to share with you sometime, and it's just of news shows around the world, like America, everywhere else, news shows. And they all begin with, this report has been brought to you by Pfizer.
Oh, yeah.
Pfizer.
What's like, I remember.
What's the famous saying? It's just as easy to buy a scientist as it is a politician.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because all those scientists are nerds and they all got thrashed on in high school. Like, I'm going to get them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so they fucked up in way more ways than one. They're negligent at the bare minimum. At a bare minimum. So it's like hard to believe almost that their trial data could be so fundamentally flawed in the first place and show an increased risk of illness, an increased risk of death. You'd think that if they're true, then the media wouldn't be reporting that, right? Mm-hmm. But yet, it's like we still got the FDA approval. Everybody's still pushing it. So what the hell happened?
Didn't McCullough say it's not even FDA approved? At the very end of the Joe Rogan podcast, he's like, it's not FDA approved.
Because that's comorbidity or whatever they actually renamed it as. Because they officially gave it a name. It's like comorbidity or something like that.
Comorbidity?
No, not comorbidity. It's like comorbidity or something like that. Look at Pfizer vaccine official name.
Oh.
Because that name is what's approved. And you can't technically get that. Yeah, comorbidity. Or however the fuck you pronounce that.
Comorbidity?
It kind of sounds like comorbidity.
Kind of does.
Natty.
Yeah, whatever it's called, you can't find anything that's under the official label of it. Like, you go search for that name in a vaccination place around it, you won't find it. All you find is BioNTech COVID-19, which the FDA licensed version is not called Pfizer or BNT, whatever it's called. It's that name.
Yeah, you look it up and it just goes straight to that.
Yeah.
BioNTech Pfizer vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got level 1 evidence, which is the highest amount of evidence from Pfizer's own trial that shows shows harm right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Any government who's approved this for its citizens, you would think would ensure that the trial had used appropriate clinical endpoints and high quality safety science, but they didn't. They just flat out didn't. It's negligent. 100% negligent.
It's negligent at the least.
At a bare minimum.
And I feel like it's not FDA approved. Back on the point, that's why they had to use the EAU, emergency use authorization.
Oh, exactly. 100%.
Because it's not approved.
Because you need like 7 years.
Yeah.
We only need 1.
So I pulled up
Nice.
the data itself. I was reading through it. Some of the, like the ones at the 54 pages, however many, 38 pages actually.
38.
Even less. So I want to show you this. So in terms of pregnancy, all right, they didn't test their initial trial data on pregnant people, right?
Right.
But they obviously rolled it out to pregnant people. Said yes, it's safe and effective for pregnant people. So in the cases reported back or that they followed after the rollout, or like within that month period, we're talking about 42,000 cases of adverse effects reported back to them. But they followed 274 pregnant people, pregnant ladies, women. Since we know women can have babies, women only. They never heard back on 200, or they lost track of 238 of them, and don't know what happened. Of those who reported the end game, you had 32 total people who reported what happened back.
Only 32?
Yeah.
Jesus.
What the fuck? But out of that 32, 23 of them had spontaneous abortions.
What the hell is a spontaneous
what's a
abortion?
spontaneous abortion?
I don't know. Let's look
It's
it up.
obviously spontaneous, right? After inoculation. Spontaneous abortion.
How do you spell spontaneous? I forgot.
SPONTANEOUS.
Spontaneous.
Yep.
Spontaneous abortion refers to pregnancy loss within
Less than 20 weeks.
at less than 20 weeks gestation in the absence of elective medical or surgical measures to terminate the.
So 20 weeks or before they had an abortion. Or it was spontaneously aborted, not induced.
It's a loss of pregnancy.
Yeah, loss
But
of
it's
pregnancy.
at the absence
It's a loss of pregnancy.
elective medical or surgical
Yeah, that's what I'm
measures.
saying.
So the person's
You've done
not
nothing.
electing to have the abortion.
Correct.
It's just occurring.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
So the baby just
Dies.
Yeah.
They had to get out of it.
Out of 20 of them, out of the 32.
23 out of the 32.
Oh, that's not good.
Yep, 5 of them, they're still waiting to hear back what happened at the time of the report. Premature birth with neonatal death, 1 death. You had 1. You had spontaneous abortion with a word I don't even know, and then death after it. So there's another one, you know?
Well, once it starts, I don't think it could stop.
Yeah, and then you had 1 normal outcome.
1?
Out of
Yeah,
32.
and 5 they're waiting to hear back on.
Oh, and
But then they
200,
also
230.
they don't know what happened.
Have no idea
Yeah.
what happened.
So of the recorded data they got back, you have 6 out of 32 that are either good or we don't know. Everybody else lost their baby.
Dude, those are scary numbers.
Yeah.
That's a little odd.
Well, I wonder what they. Do you think they listed the 200 and whatever people as
Safe and effective.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Interesting. They didn't hear back, but yeah,
Lost contact.
they're safe. and
Obviously, they're
effective.
good though if they
all
didn't get
good.
back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Assumptions.
So,
Right,
and I
that's
was wrong earlier. It's actually 8 and 2/3 pages long of side effects that are known.
Not 6.
Not 6.
Even better.
2/3.
So like from this point down, you scroll down. Just look how tightly wound that list is.
These aren't even listed. They're
It's in their appendix.
they're using colons to separate these, and they're single, like you said, single space.
top to bottom, page full, lines across.
Yeah,
I can't pronounce 90% of that.
What's the New World Order?
That doesn't exist. That's a conspiracy theory.
Oh shit, sorry.
the Great Reset. Oh my gosh, you get.
I
I don't even know what herpes zoster is.
It doesn't sound good, I'll tell you that much.
Herpes what?
herpes zosters, dude.
You can get.
The fuck is herpes zosters?
You can.
We
You
got
can
some herpes
a side
zosters.
effect. A side effect is herpes virus infection, herpes zoster,
Wait.
cutaneous disinseminated,
That's a
herpes
side effect?
zoster infected neurological, herpes I don't even know what the
Right?
zoster means.
Hey, it's herpes though.
It's got herpes
Some
in it.
kind
So
of
it's got
herpes.
dude.
Zosters is shingles.
Oh, shingles.
Zoster? Herpes shingles?
Yeah.
Herpes shingles, or maybe they're herpes, or maybe shingles are a type of herpes.
It probably
Yeah,
is.
I believe
shingles
that is the
also
case.
called herpes zoster.
Immune medicated
So
myocarditis,
is
immune
chickenpox a type
medicated.
of herpes then?
I
don't know
I would
the answer.
guess.
Probably some kind of a skin infection, right?
Well,
Sick?
yeah, because I mean, you get if you have chickenpox, then you have the think it was
Chickenpox,
virus.
varicella.
Zoster.
Zoster.
Yeah, varicella.
So it is a
zoster.
type of herpes.
Well, it's a type of zoster, anyways.
Whatever.
Herpes
Whatever the
zoster.
hell that means.
Why can't you just say herpes?
Herpes
You gotta make
zoster.
all these names.
They probably want to make sure that you know it's not like oral herpes or genital herpes.
Yeah, because when you say herpes, they're like, oh crap, and you say virus.
STDs, dude?
Oh.
Gee, these are Middle East respiratory syndrome. What? Military pneumonia, Miller-Fisher syndrome, mitochondria aspartate, amino transferase increased.
Dude,
Sounds good. Sounds real good for
it's
you.
asinine is what it is.
Ooh, partial.
I'm just ready for the new
Partial
one over, guys.
seizures
Let's just
with-
get it over with here, guys. Come on.
Partial seizures
Partial.
with secondary generalization.
Jeez.
Just your common stuff, you know?
So you can have two types of partial seizures. Penile vein thrombosis.
Yup. That's a
don't-
good one.
What,
Just like Nicki
what's wrong
Minaj's
with these? I
cousin,
mean, I
you
went
get
through all of these already.
You get the testicular swelling. Is
There's
what Nicki
like-
Minaj is talking about.
Dude,
there's
there's
actually
probably-
one that's on there and is literally it's penile necrosis is essentially what it is, where your dick just rots
rots
away and
off.
falls
Falls
off.
off.
That's one of the side effects.
No way.
Yes,
Swear.
there's confirmed cases of it.
No way.
Dude,
Penis necrosis
But
or
guess
penile
what?
It just
necrosis.
rots away.
vaccine will help.
Yep. But we're thankful for the protection the vaccine provides.
Oh, man.
You know.
Hey, I won't die of COVID, but I will lose my penis.
Yep.
Yes,
I'm definitely getting that vaccine,
Yes.
bro.
Just nothing like getting your dick rot off on you.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
At least I won't die from COVID, though.
Thank God, because I only had a 99.78% chance of living in the first
Surviving
place.
anyways.
Yeah.
dude, that is a
look at that
ridiculous
shit.
amount of number.
Oh, like
No, that's
Yeah,
what I'm
Like
saying.
it's tiny.
It's comma space. It's not
oh
like
my
a
God.
bullet
Yeah.
point.
When I email this
Yeah,
over,
email
I'll
it.
send that list along with it.
I'll put them both in descriptions.
so on this thing, it also says test negative or SARS-CoV-1 test negative, SARS-CoV-1 test positive, SARS-CoV-2 antibody test, SARS-CoV-2 antibody test negative, SARS-CoV-2 antibody test positive. So like those are the side effects. Like it doesn't matter. Like even if you get any of those,
You can still test positive. You can still test negative.
yeah.
Either direction.
So it even says it in there that you can still test either one.
One would think that you'd either test positive or negative.
You would think.
You wouldn't think you'd have 4 options on that, a yes or no question.
And obviously the
C.
stuff I went over today,
Exactly.
the stuff I went over today is just what got Robert Malone kicked off of Twitter. So obviously this is only scratching the surface of
Yeah.
like issues, not to mention the problems with PCR test in the first place. That CDC just pulled and said use a different test because you can't tell the difference between common influenza or common flu and COVID with PCR test. But yet what did they push out aggressively in the beginning? PCR test.
And they're running a 40-fold or something like that to like ramp up to get more and more and more and more viruses.
Yep. Joe Biden's plan the other day, because they didn't have enough tests, was to extend the shelf life of over 1 million expired.
Extend the
yeah.
How do you just do that?
Yeah, just it's cool. Just these were all expired, but they're no longer expired. So there you go, problem
Wave
solved.
my magic hand.
Push it back out, dude.
Yeah, so this is only scratching the surface of problems.
What about ones that I already shoved up there? Are those good too?
Yep,
You
keep
could
them
probably
going.
reuse
Yeah,
those.
you can
Probably.
definitely
Probably
reuse
get you the
those.
same result.
Now you can get the at-home tests.
No, that's right. I'm gonna ship them straight to your house for free. It's got made in
You
China
can now,
plastered right on
actually.
front of it.
You go to the CDC website. They'll ship you 4 free tests to your home anytime you want right now.
Can I just like shove it in my butthole and then?
It'll probably
ship
test
off?
You
positive.
could shove it in your dog's butthole and still test
Well,
positive.
they had how many people bring those into congressional settings in other countries where he swabbed a kiwi and a goat and they both tested positive for COVID.
I saw it just tested in like it's inconclusive. I mean, that might have been just the media.
I've seen.
just
I
saying-
mean,
Yeah.
Elon Musk took like 3 in one day.
yeah, and they all
Wild
positive, positive,
results.
negative, negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, it
It
was.
was positive, positive, negative, positive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
That doesn't make
Or no,
any
it was
sense.
backwards. It was negative, negative, positive, negative.
Something
I think.
like that.
We'd have to pull it
It
up,
was something
but-
I mean,
crazy. It was something
yeah.
Wildly
stupid. Like,
inconsistent.
yeah, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, even if you take it 4 times and it's wrong 25% of the time, I don't know if that necessarily means you can give it to the entire population.
Hey, At least we're not dying from COVID, guys.
That's true.
Thank
We're
God.
saving lives.
Saving lives.
Well, you can still die from COVID. Never mind, guys. At least I can say I might not die from COVID.
At least I might not.
Might not.
At least I say I might not be able to.
You know what I can for sure say though is I won't die from vaccine-induced side effects.
Absolutely not.
I won't have. What was the
And
one?
I can take my tinfoil hat just like you said.
Yeah, that's right.
The mRNA virus.
What was the status? Was it permanent? The 35,000 permanently disabled.
Yeah.
At least I don't have vaccine-induced permanent disability.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just 1% too.
Yeah, sure. 35,000. Yeah,
Well,
wild
shit.
stuff out there,
Yeah,
man.
dude, that's
Like it,
wild.
guys.
Dude, that
Do
was a
your own
lot
research, man.
lot to take in, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need to get this out to everybody.
Oh yeah.
The more people to know, the better.
And if you have any discrepancies of what we said,
Come on.
come on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cancel me. Go ahead.
No. I'm saying like
No,
come on our
they can
podcast.
come on our podcast.
It's actually have an open debate for once.
Exactly.
I haven't seen one of those around COVID. Coincidentally.
That's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
Dude, that was awesome though.
That was a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Never
Yeah,
been on a
dude.
podcast before. It was fun.
No, dude, that was great though.
Yeah.
You're the first that had like came with the whole deal prepared.
Yeah.
I like it.
Right down the line, man.
Well, because it's easy to dispute.
Yeah.
It's very easy to dispute any claims in regards to COVID. Be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or you didn't do research, or that's a conspiracy theory. But when you use Pfizer's literal own trial data,
It doesn't matter. It's false.
yeah, well,
And
yeah, if you ask them, yeah.
It's false and true.
and you're racist. So.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I'm 100%
You're 100%
racist because
racist.
I brought up anti-COVID narrative
Yeah,
stuff. I'm
you're
a
racist,
domestic
100%.
extremist as
And
well.
you're a
you know?
narcissist.
Sexist.
Yep, narcissist.
Sexist.
Definitely sexist. Yep. You know how it goes.
What a world we live in.
Upside down world. Yeah. It was
Well,
fun,
shit.
though. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely.
You got anything else, Jacob?
Where are we looking at? Where are we at? We're on. I know most people know us. Already,
Yeah, we're on
but-
Spotify, YouTube, Apple. Probably we'll get it on some other platforms.
But
get deplatformed.
listen to it quickly.
Before they take it all down.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
we are brought to you by Asgard Energy.
Oh yeah.
Yes, there it is. Yes.
Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Dad Bod's Barbecue.
Okay.
Good stuff out there.
They do have really good barbecue and pulled pork. Great stuff.
Delicious.
Where's this at?
That's
Contact
his.
me.
Contact me.
Hell yeah.
Real good stuff.
It was great having you guys on.
Yeah, thanks for
Absolutely,
having
man.
us.
Thank you.
Dude, that was awesome though.
I'll start my document
Next one.
acquiring for phase 2 here.
I'm down. Dude, that was great.
Maybe we'll dive back. There's some interesting stuff I feel like you would enjoy. You know,
No, yeah,
even
dude,
diving back
definitely.
into like just a history compared to like where we're at today compared to where Rome was at when Attila the Hun was around. I
Yeah.
feel like matches up so close. And Zero Hedge did a great piece on it. Actually, I think it was last week before, and just like the comparisons are extremely striking. How they controlled their foreign policy and crumbled them from the outside.
Wild, dude.
Dude, if you
is.
get it put together, you can come right back on. I don't care.
Sounds
Yeah, we
good.
can
Dude, that
literally
was
do
great.
We can literally do it next week or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need more time to prepare than that. This took me a minute. I'll get my foil hat rolled out and curled up, ready to go.
Maybe next time bring some pulled pork.
There we go. We can get a
pulled
panel
pork and
review.
talk about conspiracy theories.
That's right. Next time I'll come prepared with
Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theory time with Austin Abel.
I'll get the whiskey and the cigars rolling. We'll be all set.
Well, is this our longest?
No, for sure, dude.
How
Yeah,
long
this
did
is
we go?
We're almost at 3 hours.
Yeah, damn. Time to
not
call
bad,
it.
dude.
Yeah.
That was great though.
Absolutely.
Whenever you want to come back on, let us know.
Sounds good.
If anybody has any discrepancies of what we've talked about, let us know in the comments.
Yes, please.
You can come on out.
Yeah.
We're all for the open debate
Absolutely.
right.
because that's where actual problems are solved. Is when people can talk about things openly
Openly.
And not suppressing
Open
people's
conversation.
viewpoints.
and not just
Hey.
degrade to a attack on character either.
Right.
You fucking racist bastard.
Oh, shit.
All righty.
Till next time.
Absolutely.
You need some exit music here.
Yeah.
All righty. Peace.
Peace.
Later on.